Your Majesty. Melania and I are deeply grateful to you and Queen Camilla for your extraordinary graciousness. And to William and Kate, thank you so much. It's been so great being with you today. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. It's a singular privilege to be the first American president welcomed here. The phrase special relationship, seen from American eyes, the word special does not begin to do it justice. We're joined by history and fate, and by love and language. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a great honor to be with you.
Security remains the cornerstone of this special relationship.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
I'm Mark Dolan, and this is Talk Breakfast. Your weekend starts here. A big 4 hours coming up as Labour prepare for their annual conference. We have a governing party in total disarray. Staffers at number 10 running for the hills, the rolling out of a controversial digital ID policy, and senior figures within Labour, household name politicians, including Khan, Rayner and Burnham, lining up to replace the Prime Minister after just 14 months in office. So as this administration limps from one crisis to another, how long can Sir Keir cling to power? We'll get views from across the political spectrum. No one likes him! Who likes Keir Starmer? 0344 499 1000. I want to meet a Keir Starmer fan. And whoever you are, look after yourself. Get Booper, because you are very, very rare. On a more serious note, the wicked murderer Ian Huntley sees his prison privileges, including access to an Xbox, restored. We've got the shocking inside story. And I've literally got the dream team today working on the show, right? Deborah, literally on her hands and knees, producing today's show as she prepares a microphone for my first studio guest. Deborah is taking your calls, so forget about me. Call her, 0344 499 1000. She'll put you on the radio, she'll put you on telly, because this is Talk. So we're multi-platform. We're in-app, we're on YouTube. You can listen, you can hear, you can see, and hopefully be entertained. Very excited about this. We've been working on this, have we not? Executive producer Dean Spencer for many weeks now. A Talk Breakfast exclusive, right? This is the closest we'll ever get to journalism. In spite of amassing over 20 million viewers at the height of their fame and popularity, legendary comedy double act Cannon and Ball cruelly ignored by ITV during their 70th anniversary celebrations. Well, I'll be joined live on the show this morning by comedy icon Tommy Cannon. Tommy Cannon live on the show 9:30 a.m. to talk about his incredible career, his deep friendship with Bobby Ball, the highs and lows of fame, which I've suffered. I mean, look at me. If I'm not a victim, I'm nothing. And why this genius double act has been airbrushed from history. And folks, this is not a drill. The monologue is back in today's Dolan's Dispatch with the rollout of unpopular digital ID. Do this government have a death wish? And how long can Starmer cling on to power? And if you'd like to watch the show is being directed today by Davis, who's on his A game, let me tell you. He's had 3 coffees. I'm not sure it's only caffeine that he's on, actually, if I'm honest with you. The guy's got an unnatural energy, but folks, it is the dream team, and our job is to keep you informed, stimulated and entertained for the next 4 hours. But it's all about your opinions. You can text the word talk and your message to 87222. So much to get through, but we start with my fantastic guest who's live in the studio, the revered comedian and broadcaster, Mr. Paul Cox. Paul, so good to see you.
So good to see you, Mark. Genuinely good. Normally I just say this, right? Normally I just say this. I mean, Alex is beautiful and lovely, but to see you, Mark, is such a treat. How are you, mate?
Well, no disrespect, but who's hotter then, me or Alex?
You, Mark.
Yeah, well, you've seen me, of course, you know, scantily clad.
I have, yes, but it costs quite a lot of money as well, but thank you.
I'm happy to charge for my services. Paul, so good to see you, a titan and colossus of broadcasting and comedy, and I think you've had about 11 minutes of sleep, haven't you?
Yeah, well, it was nearly 12 actually, so, but so good to be here.
Well, I'm glad. Listen, we've got so much to go at. The reason why you've not had much sleep is because you were entertaining crowds last night as a leading stand-up comedian. But let's have a look at the front pages, if we can, Paul. Daily Mail, here in Calais, a migration catastrophe is unfolding. In 25 years reporting from the French port, Sue Reed, who's a veteran journalist, has never seen it more crowded with desperate migrants, and they've only one destination in mind. No prizes for guessing which country that might be. Strictly exclusive, Thomas Skinner. My wife took a long time to forgive my affair. Are we still talking about this? We've been talking about this affair for weeks now. Honestly, give the guy a break. The Sun newspaper. Exclusive, what really happened in King and Prince Harry's 53-minute meeting. A formal greeting, an exchange of kisses and gifts, but still no way back. Daily Express, being able to overcome is what makes us who we are. Prince William opens up on hardest year of his life, coping with wife and father's cancer battles. iWeekend, Britcard digital ID facing major backlash from Labour, leaving the Prime Minister's plan in peril. Daily Mirror now, again a royal story. Royal reflections, William, the hardest year I've ever had. Prince discussing his family's struggles. The Guardian newspaper, Labour in fight for the soul of the nation, says Sir Keir Starmer. The Prime Minister will warn the Labour Party that it's in a fight for the soul of the nation and that history will not forgive his government if it fails to confront and defeat Reform UK and the populist right. The Times newspaper, EU deals can reduce need for tax rises, hints Rachel Reed. Britain needs to sign an ambitious migration deal with the EU that allows young Europeans to live and work here. I agree. We need more immigration, actually. That's a fresh new idea from this government. Let's get the numbers up. It goes on. Sorry, I'm supposed to be neutral, aren't I, Paul?
Are you?
I think that shit might have passed. In an interview with The Times before Labour's conference this weekend, the Chancellor said that the Office for Budget Responsibility, the official forecaster, should include the benefits of the government's post-Brexit reset with the EU. She said that a youth mobility scheme, which would allow young people from the EU to work in the UK and vice versa, would be good for the economy, good for growth and good for business. Prince Andrew and his messages, excuse me, that's a misspeak on my part. Prince Andrew and his massages on Epstein's private jet. Kind of a significant difference in the interpretation of that story.
There is. In the explanation to the wife, it will be, definitely.
Yeah,
yes.
That's exactly it. You've been texting your ex-girlfriend and you've received a massage from her. Very different conversations.
Exactly, yeah.
Daily Star, Creek Star and Prince. Wills, I've had really SCHITT. Yeah, it's a family show, so I better not read the headline out in case it's misinterpreted. The Daily Telegraph, benefits bill is unsustainable, says Starmer's right-hand man. Sir Keir Starmer is seeking to bring down Britain's unsustainable out-of-work benefits bill, according to his newly appointed chief secretary in an exclusive interview with The Guardian. Darren Jones argued that the current welfare system was failing people by locking them into a lifetime of dependency. And King, key to Trump U-turn on Ukraine. The King Charles, played a critical role in persuading Donald Trump that Ukraine could win the war against Russia. Well, listen, which of those stories really catches your eye, Paul Cox?
Well, there's many that catch my eye here. It has to be. I don't really want to cover the royal stuff. I mean, I'm sure our audience love a bit of a royal story, but maybe not at 6 a.m.
We've got bigger fish to fry.
I think we do. It's back to old Starmer. I think. I mean, the soul of the country, reform on the surge. I mean, the fact that Darren Jones here, by the way, has come in and said the benefits bill is unsustainable. It's like, oh wow. I mean, in order to do his job, I would have thought he'd have had to be slightly more in tune than that. I could have told him that, well, no, probably 15 years ago.
And isn't it annoying the way Labour politicians cast themselves as incredibly brave and bold by saying things like the NHS isn't a sacred cow or we're living beyond our means? It's like no sugar Sherlock. Exactly,
no sugar Sherlock. The thing is, right, we've had this convention of essentially two-party politics, two types, two-colour politics in the UK for 120 years now, and it's kind of run its course. You know, I don't know if any of us knew this was going to happen. I didn't know it was going to happen, but it's definitely run its course. But these are lumbering beasts now, these political parties, that just don't know how to manoeuvre. They don't have in the locker the techniques, the strategies, the policies to change things. It makes it very easy for that vacuum to be filled by reform. No one else is coming in. No one else is coming in.
Totally agree. I was thinking about it recently because I've got, as you do from the comedy circuit and elsewhere, you know, I've got plenty of friends on the left, sort of woke progressives, different shades of you know, lefty, no problem. The moderate ones, the nutters, and everything in between. And you know, they're mystified about the rise of Reform UK. And they're not prepared for the shock that's coming in 3 or 4 years' time when they will almost certainly become the next government. The reason they don't get it is because they're in a bubble, obviously, and they just are with people who agree with them and share similar views. And if I try to distill it in a few words about why Reform are rising and why they'll win, is because Britain, as a project, it isn't working.
No.
Is it?
No. No, it's not working.
If you look at every aspect, economy, society, you know, culture, history, tradition, law and order, it's just energy supply. Name me one thing that's going well in Britain at the moment.
Nothing. Nothing's going well. Genuinely nothing's going well. And I don't think there's anyone who can say that there is anything going well. And if they are, they're slightly delusional about it. And, you know, I feel sorry for them because at some point, everybody's got to collectively wake up. If they're worried about right-wing populism and history looking bad because they didn't do nothing now, history isn't going to say it's because they didn't do anything now. It's going to say they never did anything for decades upon decades. Manifesto after manifesto promised to tackle and make a considerable change, particularly on immigration. And it's, you know, people often look at the immigration issue as if it's just, you know, people of a different nationality coming to the country and we don't like that. It's got very little to do with that. It might, in some, you know, niche segments of the society, there will be people who dislike that, but it's got very little to do with what's going on. What we can see is that the structure in which we're forced to operate through is just not working. It's overloaded. We don't have anything we can do. We haven't got money to invest. People keep coming in the door and we see no end to it. And the reason things like Reform are starting to gather pace is because it's not just the sort of the usual right wingers, you know, the grumpy guy in the pub. This is a lot of different people. We know this because the polls tell us. It doesn't. You can do as many vox pops as you like and talk to people in the street. We're still probably at a stage where people aren't openly going to admit Reform's what they want because they're constantly being told by mainstream media, you know, the Tories and Labour in particular at the moment, that it's bad in some way. And the thing is about keep telling someone something's bad is it makes you want to do it, doesn't it?
Yeah, most definitely.
And it makes you look closer. Like, why do you keep telling me this is bad?
Forbidden fruit.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't think Labour can do anything. I think that Tories are busted flush for now, at least. Yeah. Lib Dem. Well, what are Lib Dems going to do? I mean, look at Ed Davey. I mean, the man's a joke. You know, I know I'm supposed to come on here at 6 a.m. and be incredibly amusing about someone like Ed Davey, but I find it quite disturbing because we have this time now where Europe's on the verge of war, okay? The Middle East is a raging war. Who knows what's going to go on elsewhere? And the country itself's kind of on its knees, and the man's galloping around pretending to be a horse or diving off of a surfboard somewhere at a theme park. And he's got a great... He would have had a great opportunity, I think, to become the next opposition. Yeah. But he's just aligned himself immediately to Starmer, which is a failing enterprise.
I completely agree with you, and I don't know why the Lib Dems have shifted so radically left. And I don't understand why it's Ed Davey, as a Liberal Democrat, that denies biological reality and has to be asked 10 times in an interview what a woman is and if she can have a Willy Winkle or not.
It was weird, wasn't it? I thought we kind of got over that. I thought we'd embarrassed enough politicians for people just to go, no, boys have willies and girls don't. It was so straightforward. And you could literally have said that and looked like a serious politician. But he couldn't even bring himself to do that. And it's unfortunate because, look, you know, I don't really want to be hammering on the trans community. They're like 0.03 of the overall society. None of us want to continually talk about it. It's actually not that big an issue. But because collectively mainstream politics has decided that victimhood is the biggest commodity within UK politics, they found the smallest minority and stuck by them and said, we must defend these people at all costs. I would imagine 90% of that community don't just want to be left alone.
Well, definitely. And if I've got to, as you say, it's a very, very small number of people, and we wish people that identify as a different gender well, because it's a free country and you can do what the hell you like here, and good luck to you, just like you can be romantic with anyone you like. And Britain is a very open, liberal, tolerant country. Where it encroaches is, you know, biological male in a female lavatory.
Yes.
The proliferation now of unisex toilets, which according to most of the women I know are horrific because men are using them, and we know how awful men are in the bathroom.
We know a couple of...
What absolute slobs, and how messy blokes are. And, you know, why are we even having this conversation? And also, for me, a red line, and, you know, this is particularly, I think, relevant to you as an amazing comedian and craftsman, is the butchering of our language to accommodate this fiction. So, as you say, it is a small minority of people, and it should be a trivial, almost non-existent matter. But if I've got to refer to someone as they, even though it's a singular individual, I'm afraid that I'm not going to go there. No, and then that's when it does start to encroach.
No, exactly. It's prescribed speech, prescribed thinking. You must do. If you don't do, then you are bad. And we're like, what are you talking about? It's nuts.
And I've always thought that if you yield to that, and if you are, you know, if you don't, as George Orwell said, what is it? You don't believe what you're seeing from your eyes and your ears. You know, that's what the party's ultimate instruction is, for you to ignore what your eyes and your ears can see and hear. You have to ask yourself, what is next? The issue, the disappointment, I think, for the Lib Dems is that they occupied a sweet spot between Labour and the Tories, didn't they?
They did.
People like me, who back in the day, and I hope to this day, I consider myself to be a moderate figure who just looks more radical because the world's gone mad.
Exactly.
But the Lib Dems was a good opportunity for people that were essentially don't want socialism and maybe didn't like the sort of free market selfishness of the Tories. It was a great opportunity. But as you say, if you vote Lib Dem, it's effectively a vote for Labour, isn't it?
Well, they're hoping to be in quite clearly. I mean, I wasn't so starkly aware of it until the recent Lib Dem conference, where obviously Ed Davey mentioned Nigel Farage 43 times, didn't mention the Prime Minister by name, didn't criticise the Prime Minister at all,
Quite amazing.
and became very, very clear very quickly that he was aligning himself for a possible coalition. And they're already dead in the water. What's the advantage? It should be the other way around, if anything. Definitely,
definitely. Well, look, here's a question for you. Would the replacement of Sir Keir Starmer as Prime Minister by Andy Burnham, Angela Rayner, or, wait for it, Sadiq Khan, would that improve the fortunes of this Labour government, and would it be good for Britain? I'll be asking Paul Cox next.
Jenrick seems to say a lot of the things that are similar to what reforms say. Maybe he would have a chance of rescuing them, but that's not exactly a foregone conclusion. And as you pointed out, they're starting from such a low baseline, the Tories, right now, and they have to go around apologising for everything. Because as much as Helen Whately can try and say, well, we inherited a dreadful situation from Tony Blair and Gordon Brown, I mean, people are sort of looking at their watches and going, sorry, how far back are we meant to go?
I know.
How much responsibility are you just casting to the wind?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
OK, I'm delighted to say that with me in the studio is the outstanding comedian and broadcaster Paul Cox. iWeekend, Paul, Britcard digital ID facing major backlash from Labour, leaving PM's plan in peril. Number 10's plan to make digital identity cards mandatory provokes criticism from a wide range of Labour MPs jeopardising the policy. Keir Starmer tries to win back authority on the eve of the conference. What do you make of the timing of this announcement, Paul, of digital ID?
I found it actually quite peculiar. I think it wasn't really part of his manifesto. In fact, I vaguely remember promises that they wouldn't have any digital ID whatsoever. Yeah. It's always been contentious. Someone like... well, it's basically a Blairite idea. He seems to have staked his whole life's work on digital ID, Tony Blair. I don't know why. And because it's Tony Blair and because it's people's data, I fear sinister reasons behind it. I think the timing's odd. I think maybe it's distraction, but it just seems to come out of nowhere, and it's gone from 0 to 100 incredibly quickly. Yeah. It's gone from it being leaked to the papers that he might be doing it to it's absolutely happening. It's happening really quickly.
True. It feels rushed, actually, doesn't it? This
yeah, and I'm not sure what. I mean, the man's looking for a legacy, I assume.
I think you put your finger on it. I think that he wonders whether he'll be fighting the next election as leader of the Labour Party and Prime Minister, and therefore he needs something to show for his time in power. What did David Cameron have? Gay marriage. You know, there's like one or two big ticket items that you can look back on, and perhaps that's what he thinks this legacy is going to be. Is it a clue that he knows the game is up and he needs a couple of seismic policies that he can put his name to? Because if he just like carries on like this and dribbles along for another year or two and then exits number 10, what will he have to show for it?
Not a lot. Probably one of the most disastrous reigns as Prime Minister I've seen in my lifetime, for sure. And you know, that we had a succession of Tory MPs in the last 5 years of the Tory empire. That come and went very quickly and produced very little and helped drive the country into the position it's in now. Yeah. And I think he's outstripping those in terms of disastrous consequences.
You're so right. It's taken Labour 14 months to become the Tories.
Yeah.
And now they're lining up to replace Starmer. We'll come to that in a moment. But on this digital ID, my understanding is that a majority of the public are quite comfortable with it. What's your view?
No, I'm not comfortable with it. And I think it's actually one of those things that seems to unite parts of the right and parts of the left. Weirdly, you know, you find yourself scrolling through X or something and agreeing with Sultana or Corbyn in some way, and it scares the living daylights out of you.
I know, Richard Burgon.
Yeah.
You can start doing pinned tweets.
It's like, where am I? For me, it's because of what I've seen happen. I hate to be conspiratorial, because what it does, it seems to undermine your argument in some way. And you do have to add a sort of conspiratorial element to this as part of the discussion.
Yeah.
Because we have to look forward and see what could possibly happen based on, you know, if we'd had this digital ID as part of the COVID pandemic, I fear that it would have stopped us going to certain supermarkets, or you wouldn't have been able to go to the pub or a restaurant or work or whatever. There would have been ways and means to control, but it's bit papers, please.
100%.
And I just, do you know what? The idea of it on the surface, and I can see why people don't care, because they look at their driver licence, they look at their passport. Yeah. But if it becomes mandatory to hold one, and therefore you need one to do certain things, and the government at the time you disagree with, or they disagree with you, more importantly, then and they can control you in some way. I find that incredibly sinister. I'm not comfortable with it at all.
Well, no, definitely. It may be that this rather anodyne administration wouldn't do much with it except make it easier for you to get a GP appointment or, you know, have a look at your self-assessment bill. And that's, of course, how it starts. The issue you've got is how this technology and how this infrastructure could be leveraged in the future by a less innocuous administration. That's the point, isn't it?
I agree, and maybe I would agree with that administration, but the whole point of being a sort of free speech champion, free will champion, is that I want to defend the free speech and free will of those people that I disagree with as well. So at the moment, you know, I don't like this Labour Party, and I could say something today or tomorrow or write something that they disagree with, and I could be punished in some way. But I wouldn't want that to be like the Kimmel incident. I never wanted Kimmel to be cancelled for his words, because I believe in free speech.
Yeah.
So, you know, I was actually defending him. And if you can take that a step further and you're able to control people's lives through their data because of what they say and do, and everybody's on a platform now with social media.
For sure.
So you've only got to look at something like Lucy Connolly, and kind of what I'm driving at is this two-tier stuff. We see with a guy this week who was wielding a knife and slashing it at a guy burning the Quran, has got a slap on the wrist and told by the judge he's a fairly decent fella. And then you look at something like Lucy Connolly, and she ends up 12 months in prison away from her young daughter. And you have to look at those two things and go, how do you reconcile that? And that's purely based on the politics of the time. That's the way you reconcile it. Undoubtedly, I think, undoubtedly. So people will deny that till the cows come home, of course. But of course, behind the scenes and as a viewer of that, I think it's undoubted.
Digital ID, Paul, is an unusual one because it doesn't split left versus right. It's because you've got Nigel Farage and Richard Burgon and the Corbynites you mentioned who are against it. But where it's confusing is that the left are slightly split on it, in that it's been, you know, characterised by some of my viewers and listeners in the last 24 hours as being a slightly Marxist idea.
Sure.
Papers, please society, and the individual subservient to the will of the state. And I would agree with that. And many are suggesting it's got the whiff of the Fabian Society about it. And of course, it was the original brainchild of Tony Blair. But yet others on the left are against it. So why are the left split on this, do you think?
I think the left are split by they're split down the lines they're already split down. So if you look at the people that are against it, they are against this Corbyn government, irrespective of whether they're in the Labour Party or on the left or not. So I think it's a bit of, well, that it's Starmer and Blair, and essentially it's Blair and Brown politics, isn't it? Without a doubt. And what's happening there is people like Corbyn never supported that anyway. Sultana wouldn't have supported that anyway. So I think that's part of the reason. They're already divided on the left, and it's, you know, everything's kind of binary, weirdly, in their non-binary world. I suppose you're right, and it's the moderate left who appear to be the most enthusiastic about digital ID, and essentially sort of legacy of New Labour almost. And it does make you wonder how much influence Tony Blair has on this current administration. Quite a lot, I'd imagine. Quite a lot. Everything about Starmer tells me that it's a lot. The difference between Starmer and Blair is intellect. I think that you know, Starmer is not the intellect that Blair was. I did vote Blair when I was a bright young 18-year-old, but I don't support any of his policies now. But you can see that Starmer, without any sort of philosophy of his own, is trying to sort of like limp it onto whatever is close by.
We've got a developing story, which is the UK population has surged by 750,000 in a year. That's the equivalent of a city the size of Leeds, and yet, wait for it, Rachel from Accounts wants more immigration. And also Prince Andrew named in the latest Epstein files. How do you solve a problem like Prince Andrew? All of that is next.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yes, you're listening to Talk, the home of common sense. Mark Dolan with you for the next 3.5 hours, and we're very excited because at 9:30, comedy legend Tommy Cannon on the show. Of course, one half of the incredible genius double act of Cannon and Ball, cruelly ignored by ITV during their 70th anniversary celebrations. Tommy Cannon on the show, telling his life story at 9:30. But let me bring you up to speed if you're joining us with tomorrow's front pages. Daily Express. Prince William opens up on hardest year of his life, coping with wife and father's cancer battles. Being able to overcome is what makes us who we are, says Prince of Wales, sounding there like a king in waiting. What a wise statement he's made. iWeekend, Britcard digital ID facing major backlash from Labour, leaving PM's plan in peril. The Guardian, Labour in fight for the soul of the nation, says Starmer. And UN diplomats walk out of Benjamin Netanyahu's speech. Indulging there in some student politics, I would argue. The Daily Mirror now, Royal Reflections, the Mirror, forgive me. Royal Reflections, William, the hardest year I've ever had. The Sun, exclusive, what really happened in King and Prince Harry's 53-minute meeting. A formal greeting, an exchange of kisses and gifts, but still no way back. Daily Mail, here in Calais, a migration catastrophe is unfolding. In 25 years reporting from the French port, the iconic journalist Sue Reed has never seen it more crowded with desperate migrants, and they've got only one destination in mind. Thomas Skinner, my wife took a long time to forgive my affair. Daily Star, Creek Star and Prince William, I've had a really bad year, and the Times. EU deals can reduce need for tax rises, hints Reeves. Britain needs to sign an ambitious migration deal with the EU that allows young Europeans to live and work here, bolstering economic growth and reducing the need for tax rises in the budget, according to Rachel Reeves. Let me get your thoughts on that, Paul Cox, because the UK population has surged by 750,000 in a year. That's the equivalent of the size of a city like Leeds. But meanwhile, the Chancellor wants more immigration. Make it make sense.
Well, it doesn't make sense because the pot's full, right? We're all full. Do you know what? I would normally say things like, I'm okay with immigration, particularly planned immigration, where it's formalised and we know exactly what we're getting and we're filling spaces. We're not doing that. And there's no point inviting anyone else to come into this pot if there's this leak at the bottom where anyone can come in on a dinghy and eventually just become part of our society, OK? So you have to fix that, because it's OK. There has to be a net contribution, though. That we have to, whoever's coming has to add. They can't subtract. And unfortunately, no matter what you think about it, you can make it sound as bigoted or racist as you like. It's not. It's pure economics.
It's the bottom line.
It's the bottom line every single time. People can come in, and if they are contributing, and we do, there are plenty of skill sets we lack. There are plenty of jobs that we need to fill. The NHS is full of them. Sort of kind of getting bored of sort of pointing that out, a caveat that says, yeah, immigration is fine as long as it's the right type of immigration. But it's so flipping true. We've got to a point now where just anybody can come in. We don't know who they are, we don't know what they're doing, and they have no plans to contribute.
And the left will often say the figures regarding illegal immigration are trivial, that it's 50,000 in a year, which is a drop in the ocean compared to legal net migration, and it's a tiny proportion of the population. Well, I'm not so sure about that, because with 50,000 people entering the country illegally every year whose details we don't have, and criminal history and all the rest of it, well, that's 3 or 4 billion a year just to accommodate them.
Yes.
The majority will stay, and I doubt the majority are engineers, doctors and entrepreneurs, I fear. And the issue we've got is, but if it's 50k a year, Paul, that's 250,000 in this parliament. That's not a small number of people at all. Not at all,
and that would be tens and tens of billions of pounds as well. That's going out of a pot that's not being replenished. That's the other thing, of course, It's just the trouble I have with the left is economically they're kind of dumb. It's very straightforward economics actually. The country's revenue generates what's available to pay out in terms of the welfare state, which includes benefits or fixing the roads or the rail or whatever it might be, in order for us to move around as an economy and make more money. If something's continually draining on that, taking from it and not putting back in, which the vast majority of those 50,000 are doing, then it's like a cancer. No matter which way you look at it, it's like a cancer. It will just take until the body dies.
Most definitely. And, to defend some left-leaning regimes, if you look at New Labour, well, they achieved a progressive agenda and an investment in public services via economic growth.
They did.
So this was a left-wing administration that did understand the economy, and it was Gordon Brown who literally love-bombed the square mile, which is inches from where we're broadcasting right now, because he could see the enormous tax revenue that was coming in from financiers.
They set in train, though, what we're seeing now. So what we're seeing now in terms of immigration, they did a couple of things. They made it sound sexy for everybody to get a tertiary education, everybody going to get a degree or higher education. There's no need for that, by the way, because you're just taking young people out of the work environment, filling them full of debt, and it's them taking ages to recontribute to society.
With a degree in the history of art.
Yeah, which let's face it, is practically useless.
Well, I mean, I know a lot about Van Gogh, don't worry about that. That degree wasn't a complete waste. No, I'm joking. I did not do history of art, but yeah, that's the. So I mean, you are right. There's two big things that were probably negatives.
They built a future economy. This is where Fabian comes in, by the way. And the biggest red flag for Fabian is digital ID, because that's just, they've been trying to sneak that in, and we're seeing with the polls that they're going to have a big fight on. But what they did is they built an economy. They had a successful economy, and they built its future based on cheap labour.
Yeah.
And that had to come from somewhere.
Yeah.
And they opened the gates, and in everybody come. And now we're 25, 30 years down the line, and it's not working, and we can't do anything with them.
You should be Prime Minister, because that is...
I plan to be.
Listen, we can but dream. Paul Coxon, number 10.
Can you imagine?
Still doing his gigs in Aldershot on a Friday night.
Exactly.
Because a comedian, you can't give up those gigs.
No, you can't. You can't. You never know when it's going to win.
And then you can't get it back then.
No, exactly.
So here's the thing, right? So you have identified a really important point about the fact that what's happened is mass immigration, high levels of immigration, unprecedented levels, existed and have existed and continue to exist to prop up what is a failed business model that is modern Britain.
Yeah.
Because that's what it's done. It's papered over the cracks, hasn't it?
It has paper. And those cracks have got bigger and bigger, and there isn't enough paper. It's absolutely huge problem. Unfortunately, a lot of those people. Not unfortunately, I was about to say unfortunately, those people are still alive. I don't wish Blair any harm. But what I mean is, it's as if those governments are still there, because we've got a Labour Party in without anyone at the helm that can lead through philosophy of any kind, i.e. Keir Starmer. We have no idea what he stands for. He doesn't know what he stands for. He reads speeches that are written for him and apologises for them a week later. I mean, that's not what you want from a leader. At least with leaders you disagree with, who have got philosophies, you know what they stand by, you know what you expect from them. We have no idea what we're getting from Starmer, so he's being led from behind. He's like a puppet. The puppeteers seem to be Blair and people around Blair. Even Campbell yesterday, Alistair Campbell, was talking about coming back in and being the comms czar for Starmer, because his aide stepped down this week. I mean, what a disaster that would be. Nothing about that period now, 30 years later, has proven to be any good for us whatsoever. You can point to almost anything that's going wrong now, and it comes back to that period between 97 and 2007.
And I will say, notwithstanding my remarks about economic growth under New Labour, they were the first administration in history to borrow money whilst the economy was growing, which is truly shocking. And let's not also forget that crazy policy that Gordon Brown had for a few years, where we just literally gave children money. Yeah. Do you remember the Child Trust Fund? Now, I can see where it's coming from. I've got kids, and actually they were old enough to have a child trust fund.
Yes.
But I think we will look back, given how poverty-stricken we now are, and scratch our heads at an administration that literally just handed cash over to unborn children.
Yeah, my daughter was born in 2009. She was given that as well. It still exists now, like £250, £300 or whatever it was, given to every single child born in the UK at that time.
No strings attached.
Nothing. And it still sits there now. And that's money completely untouched that's given away. And it all sounds good, doesn't it? Jam today, jam tomorrow. It sounds great, but you have to be able to pay. At some point, somebody's going to have to come in and do some very draconian measures to put us back on the straight and narrow.
And it's very socialist just to hand people money for no reason. And what I would do is I would say, being maybe, I guess, you know what, I would try to be a compassionate capitalist or something. I don't know how I'd label myself, but what I would say is I'd say if that child trust fund cost a certain amount of money, such as £750 million, let's say, I would say, yeah, we're giving the kids that money. We are actually. I've earmarked that cash, but it's not just going to sit in a bank account doing nothing. It is going to apprenticeships, right? And it's earmarked for apprenticeships, so that if you leave school, you have almost a sort of civic right to get on an apprenticeship course, and that's our guarantee, a golden guarantee to you that when you leave school, we'll put you on an apprenticeship scheme.
Well, there's very little foreign investment and immigration associated to apprenticeships, and I don't want to be a conspiratorial once again, but when you open up the borders, you open up your welfare state, you open up your benefit system, and you open up your educational system, saying that everybody should have a higher education, you're essentially saying to the world, come in, invest your money. And people just flooded in and brought people with them. And the reason, and this is Fabian again, because the reason they did that is because they knew over time you'd creep the population up and be able to hopefully prop up this grand idea they had for the economy. It's totally failed. And what we're left with is a massive population that's unable to sustain itself.
Most definitely. And we talked about illegal immigration. Well, those figures of 750,000 in a year is obviously mind-boggling. A disaster for any hopes of integration and a successful multicultural society, because, you know, when it comes to immigration, it's about, as you say, the people that will make a contribution and who will participate in the culture of this country, the traditions, but it's also about the volume, isn't it? You know, what's that old saying? The dosage is the poison.
Yes.
You know, and a little whiskey is good for you, but 7 bottles and it's game over.
Exactly.
And I think the point about immigration is a certain amount, the sweet spot is highly valuable. And, you know, there's an unending list of people that are immigrants to this country who have made a huge contribution. I'm an Irishman myself of foreign parentage. So therefore, that's fine. The other issue that hasn't really been discussed is the low-skilled labour that's coming in that we do need is still a net cost to the country. Because if you come from, let's say, Asia, and you come to the UK on a visa in order to work in a care home, it's still costing us money over the lifetime of that individual, because if they work in a care home, they're going to be having in-work benefits and will not be a net contributor to the Treasury over their lifetime. And there was one particular study that suggested that if a low-skilled worker who's come here legally, that we need, we're still down £1 million if they live to the age of 90.
It's incredible, isn't it? And you can see already, because nothing's going to change, the population is the population. You're not going to have deportations to the extent that you're going to change the trajectory. And that trajectory now is exponential. So that elderly population, I should imagine, is fairly British right now. It's going to be very multicultural in years to come. It's going to have its own problems. And we're not thinking now about how we're going to solve that problem, because we're so in the sludge of the problems that we have now that I don't see how this is going to change. I would literally, I see it as a bit of a leak. In order to fix a leak, you turn off the source. You turn the water off into the house, and then you fix the leak. I would turn off all immigration for 5 years and just work on what we're going to do, and then restart it back up in a controlled manner.
There you go. Paul Cox for Prime Minister. What
Yes.
do you think? Folks, we're very excited because Tommy Cannon is on the show at 9:30 today, cruelly ignored by ITV during their 70th anniversary celebrations. But next up, did the King change Donald Trump's mind about Ukraine? And also, Prince Andrew named in the latest Epstein Files release. What do we do with this guy? It looks like he received massages on Epstein's jet. A major headache for the King and potentially the country. That plus all of the front pages next.
There's a park in Ilford called, I think it's called Valentine Park. We heard reports that a swan had been taken out of the lake and was seen being carried by several men, 3 or 4 men, and they were running out of the park with it. We heard a similar story from Tottenham Hale that a man was seen camping around a lake and there were swan feathers everywhere and swan bones. The authorities didn't turn up straight away. They went a few days later. There was still this massacre of bones on the floor.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
How about this story in the Mail newspaper? Here in Calais, a migration catastrophe is unfolding. In 25 years reporting from the French port, Sue Reed has never seen it more crowded with desperate migrants, and they've only one destination in mind. So a migrant catastrophe with a deeply ominous portent for Open Doors Britain is unfolding 21 miles away across the Channel, writes Sue Reed. Multitudes of destitute and desperate men originating from across the world are in the French city of Calais, which increasingly resembles a giant refugee encampment. In the many years I've reported on the migration crisis, she writes, sweeping Europe, I've never seen the ferry port so overwhelmed. This week I watched as yet more people arrived, having fled or been driven out of other countries in Europe, which are clamping down on them. Nearly all of them are men. How do we solve this problem? Some would argue, Paul, that we simply have to accept this brave new world of migration around the world, and we need to accommodate these folk. Do we need to give up the idea of nationhood and borders, given what's happening globally?
No. I don't think you can, because I talked about it. I talked about it earlier in terms of the economy, the structure of the economy, how it's funded and how it's spent. There's only so many people. If you open up your borders, you open up your welfare state. We cannot afford a welfare state that's supporting the rest of the globe. Now, there are many arguments that people and debates that people can have about what's happening in the rest of the world, why it's happening. Did we contribute negatively in some way? But it comes down to sheer basic fact, and that is that our economy cannot support it. The reason people want to come here is because of our welfare state. We offer it's a very good offering. You know, if you can get onto the system, you get free housing, free money, free heating, free food. You get everything free, basically. You can,
dentistry, healthcare.
Yeah, taxis to and from both. The sort of thing you and I would not get.
Correct.
Interestingly, as an incumbent member of this society, we would not get that, having been net contributors for 40 years. So that's why people want to come here. And also, they've got a lot of family here now. Successful people have got across the border, across the Channel into the UK, and now people, friends, family, etc., are trying to follow them in. And we're doing nothing to deter. Very little to deter. It's all rhetoric from Starmer and smash the gangs, etc. Nothing's being smashed. Nothing's happening whatsoever. Numbers aren't going down. In fact, they're up by comparison on previous years. So I think we've got a huge problem, and at some point I have to make some very difficult decisions. And no, it doesn't matter what's going on in the rest of the world.
I think you are right. You either have a nation or you don't. And I think it was Milton Freeman who echoed what you've been saying, which is you can either have open borders or a welfare state. You can't have both. I mean, we could have open borders if there was no NHS and no unemployment benefit, no housing benefit. It would be fine. We could be like Dubai and survival of the fittest, no tax either. We could do that, but what you can't have is both.
No, and there wouldn't be the big queues in Calais if that was the case.
Yeah,
they'd go somewhere else.
Really
they'd go to the next position. They'd go to the next second position, whichever country that is.
And the funny thing is that actually it's arguably the humane thing to do to stop the votes under whichever administration. It would certainly help France out, because France are experiencing this stampede of people who are arriving in France with the UK in mind.
Yes.
So it's actually in France's best interest to tackle this as well.
Yes.
Because we are a bit of a honeypot, are we not? Prince Andrew and his massages on Epstein's private jet. Now, this is a story that has continued to dog the Duke of York, and now his ex-wife, Sarah Ferguson, has been implicated, writing a grovelling email to the disgraced paedophile Epstein following his conviction for child sex trafficking, and having announced that she would cut off all ties with this man. A few months later, she writes to him as a dear friend. This is a big headache for King Charles, isn't it?
Huge, and it's not going to go away because he's always going to be his brother. You know, unless he locks him in the tower, I don't think anything's going to happen. Look, I mean, he clearly was attracted to whatever Epstein was offering, whether that was just, you know, his character, the fun you could have with him, or some of the more seedier aspects of what was going on the island and in hotels around the world. But you're not going to solve the problem at all, because things are just going to keep coming out. They drip feed the Epstein files out. You're going to see them on planes and islands and in hotel reservations. You're going to see them all over the place. It's going to be very difficult to deny, and it's never going away. This happened, and it's too late.
Yeah, he's lost HRH. He's lost his frontline royal duties and patronages and all the charity stuff. It seems that he occupies his day riding horses, fishing, hunting, and driving the Range Rover around. So he's been demoted, I think, as much as you can. And as you said, the problem for the king is that he'll always be the king's brother. He can't be too harsh on Andrew, because what if Andrew did a Prince Harry and wrote a tell-all book or made a documentary?
Well, yes. It's not unprecedented, is it?
It's not. And he'd have, in many ways, he'd have reason. See, he'd be seeking revenge if somehow he was turfed out.
Oh, we don't need that, do we? We don't need... You imagine the Netflix series.
And the thing is, all right, he may be a bit of a wrong, and I don't know, Prince Andrew. Certainly the allegations against him are not, they're unedifying. But... I mean, he'll have. He's got a book in him, hasn't he?
Oh, definitely. He's got a couple of books in him.
He knows where the bodies are buried.
He certainly does, and I don't know. I mean, I think things will change under William at some point. There'll be able to be a clean break. It's William's uncle. He will be able to ostracise him even further if he wants to. I think King Charles is going to have a huge problem. Look. He's never actually really been convicted. He's never been convicted of anything.
It's a good point.
So, you know, it's all innuendo and hearsay, and we're all making our own mind up. But it's optics, and it doesn't look good. And the fact that we can sit here and say, well, you know, unfortunately for him, he's been cast aside and he gets to have a life of fishing and hunting and driving. I mean, we'd all kill for that, wouldn't we?
It wouldn't be bad. I've got to say, there's worse ways to see out your years. Speaking of pleasurable experiences, massive news, which is Greggs the Bakers, who are now just branded as Greggs. You know the story.
Pub.
Yeah.
They created a pub in Newcastle, Mark.
I mean, there's me saying that nothing in this country works. I stand corrected, because if we're going to have a pub chain, which is Greggs the Pub, I mean, I'm back on board.
Why not? I mean, it'd be interesting. Whenever something like this happens, I often think to myself, that's never going to work. And then, of course, inevitably it does, and it becomes the latest new thing. Unfortunately, I think pub life is dying in the UK. It's dying because culturally we've changed. And I'm not just talking about multiculturalism here. You know, young, white, British, black kids that are British born for generation after generation are not going to the pub in the same way you and I would have done in the 90s. That's just not happening anymore. The culture's not there.
A lot of them don't drink because they're gaming. They got Netflix and other stuff.
Yeah, there's plenty for them to do. We didn't have much choice, did we? No. It was go to the pub or watch the telly.
Yeah,
that was it.
That was exactly.
There was nothing else to do.
No, and four or five channels. And the other thing is that the pandemic changed habits too, and you could go to Tesco or Sainsbury's and you buy a 4-pack of beer for, you know, £4, as opposed to spending £7 in a pint. I mean, I remember when some of those lockdowns ended, and I went into the pub and got a round in, you know, 3 or 4 drinks, and it's like 27 quid, and you're like, wow. You know, so the pub is in trouble. But I will say that Greggs is exactly what you want, isn't it? Because you've got a pint, and then you've got the sausage roll.
Yeah.
And you've got the stuffed baguette. And I just think that the idea of combining alcoholic beverages and then the menu from Greggs, I think
Witherspoons have got a monopoly on that side of the market, and I think that there's space for someone like Greggs to come in and spice it up a bit.
And if you get particularly drunk, you can try one of the vegan sausage rolls.
Yeah, why not?
Only edible after 11 pints of Stella.
Crikey.
Paul, how can people find out about your work?
Just come and follow me at Paul Cox Comedy, particularly on X. Love to see you there.
You're a triple threat. You're an Adonis, you're a hilarious man, and you're a very wise analyser of the
thank
news.
You very much, man.
You are. Paul, come and see us again soon. Brilliant, Paul Cox. Folks, I've got a really busy hour to come. How long can Starmer cling on to power? That's next.
Your Majesty, Melania and I are deeply grateful to you and Queen Camilla for your extraordinary graciousness. And to William and Kate, thank you so much. It's been so great being with you today. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. It's a singular privilege to be the first American president welcomed here. The phrase special relationship, seen from American eyes, the word special does not begin to do it justice. We're joined by history and fate, and by love and language. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a great honor to be with you.
Security remains the cornerstone of this special relationship. We have the deepest, most advanced defense relationship in the world.
As I said last night, the bond between our countries is like no other anywhere in the world. The United States and the United Kingdom have done more good on this planet than any two nations in human history.
We are working together.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, at top of the morning to you, I am Mark Dolan. This is Talk Breakfast. Your weekend starts here. We've got a very big 3 hours coming up. As Labour prepare for their annual conference, we have a governing party in total disarray. Staffers at number 10 running for the hills. The rolling out of a controversial digital ID policy, and senior figures within Labour, including Sadiq Khan, Angela Rayner and Andy Burnham, lining up to replace the Prime Minister after just 14 months in office. as this administration limps from one crisis to another. How long can Sir Keir Starmer cling to power? We'll get the views of a range of political voices from across the political spectrum, because if nothing else, this show is all about opinions. Wicked murderer Ian Huntley sees his prison privileges, including access to an Xbox, restored. We've got the shocking inside story. And in a Talk Breakfast exclusive, in spite of amassing over 20 million viewers at the height of their fame and popularity, legendary comedy double act Cannon and Ball, cruelly ignored by ITV during their 70th anniversary celebrations. I'll be joined live on the show by comedy icon Tommy Cannon at 9:30 this morning to talk about his incredible career, his deep friendship with Bobby Ball, and why this genius double act has been airbrushed from history. And this is not a drill, folks. The monologue is back in today's Dolan's Dispatch. With the rollout of unpopular digital ID, do this government have a death wish? And how long can Keir Starmer cling on to power? That is Dolan's Dispatch at 8 o'clock. Appointment listening, appointment viewing. Don't miss it. But if you're joining us, let me take you through tomorrow's front pages. Daily Express. Prince William opens up on the hardest year of his life, coping with wife and father's cancer battles. Being able to overcome is what makes us who we are. The Sun stays on the royal theme with an exclusive. What really happened in King Charles and Prince Harry's 35-minute meeting? A formal greeting, an exchange of kisses and gifts, but still no way back for the prodigal prince. Daily Mail. Here in Calais, a migration catastrophe is unfolding. In 25 years reporting from the French port, Sue Reed has never seen it more crowded with desperate migrants, and they've only got one destination in mind. It is, of course, Blighty. The Times newspaper now. EU deals can reduce need for tax rises, hints Rachel Reeves. Britain needs an ambitious migration deal with the EU, writes the Chancellor. To live and work here, young Europeans will bolster economic growth and reduce the need for tax rises in the budget. Surely Rachel Reeves is now the only politician in Britain calling for more immigration. Make it make sense. The Guardian. Labour in fight for the soul of the nation, says Sir Keir Starmer. And UN diplomats walk out of Benjamin Netanyahu's speech as the Israeli Prime Minister addressed the conference. iWeekend. Britcard digital ID facing a major backlash from Labour, leaving PM's plan in peril. Daily Telegraph. King key to Trump U-turn on Ukraine, and benefits bill is unsustainable, says Starmer's right-hand man. In other news, the Pope is Catholic and bears relieve themselves in the woods. I'm delighted to say, reacting to the big stories of the day, with me in the studio, retired Scotland Yard detective, Chief Inspector Mike Neville. Mike, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mark.
Mike, will digital ID make my viewers and listeners safer?
I'm afraid not. You know, all my life I've carried an ID card. I was a soldier, then I was in the police. I've always carried things around. But I think we saw the overreach during COVID of what the state can do, you know, checking up which pub you've been to and whatever else. And I'm afraid you just can't trust the government with data. We've seen this massive release of data about people who are interpreters in Afghanistan. Yeah. All the time.
Which is going to cost us billions in compensation.
It's absolutely fiasco. I mean, even in the police, the fiascos of IT. I remember saying to the former commissioner, Hogan Howe, I said, it's disgraceful that the IT department in the Metropolitan Police has spent £260 million in a year and achieved nothing. He said, that's untrue. it was £360 million. So in every government department we see not only waste, we see utter incompetence, we see a civil service who'll be, your data will be on this machine and they'll be working from home and fiddling around with it on their own personal computers. So whilst it seems like a good idea in practice and could, you know, it might help us a little bit, firstly, we can't trust them with the data. And secondly, if you're an unscrupulous employer, well, you just don't look at it, do you? Like at the moment, you have to produce a passport or whatever to say I'm a worker, and they don't do it now. So why would they do it then? I just think that the next thing will be they'll be looking at your bank account and where you go and how much petrol you've got out and what you're buying at the shops. I'm afraid to say I don't trust the government, and I think a lot of people feel the same on that.
Well, indeed, and we saw £10 billion pumped into an IT system for the NHS, which was scrapped. And we've even seen private industry suffer from hacking and cyber attacks, including the likes of Marks and Spencer and other big brands, Jaguar Land Rover. Well, with their deep resources, if they can't protect themselves from hackers, I don't think a bunch of rather lackadaisical civil servants will keep us safe.
And I'm absolutely with you on that.
Working from home.
So your details will be stolen, but my biggest fear is the government tracking people. And we've just seen, haven't we? I mean, I think from a policing point of view, we see the police, you know, going after people who put social media posts out instead of catching real criminals. And I just think it's all, the last thing the authorities need is more access to where we've been and what we're doing.
We obviously know about criminality, antisocial behaviour, and I wanted to ask you, because there have been shocking examples this week of the most awful crimes being committed by youngsters in particular. And I've spoken to lots of ex-cops who say that we need a tougher culture of policing, a zero-tolerance attitude to antisocial behaviour and so-called low-level crime, because you'll agree there is no such thing as a low-level crime. Crime is crime. And I hear all of that. But is there a wider question about what's happening to society and why young people are so feral, so dangerous and so lawless?
I think there is. I mean, I went to a grammar school where you could get the cane. You know, that's a difference in society, I suppose.
Didn't do you any harm.
No, didn't.
Fine figure of man.
I was a soldier.
A good career behind you. Yeah.
But I think the trouble is that the police are often today the first people to say to somebody, no, you can't do that, because the parents are lackadaisical, the teachers allow them to get away with it, the kids know that they can make any complaint, the most outrageous complaint about a teacher, the teacher's suspended, there's no action taken against the young person, and we've completely lost discipline. And then the police try and catch up with all this, and they simply can't, even if they wanted to. But the police lack the physical presence. Like I said, I was a soldier. Half of the Metropolitan Police used to be made up of ex-armed forces. No, they've completely done away with that. They did away with the height limit that used to have to be. In the city police, you used to have to be 6 foot tall, and the armed robbers wouldn't go to the city to rob banks because they knew the coppers were all on the rugby team and they'd get hold of them. But now we must give everybody a chance. You've got officers who are 5 foot tall, lack that physical presence. It's a whole scheme of things that have come together that have produced this awful situation that we find ourselves in today.
Well, that's it. And I'm, you know, like you, I'm all for tough policing, but the issue is that the police can't fix the consequences of a broken society, and that's why I don't want to sound too woke about it or give excuses to these
I think you're right as well, Matt, because it's like thieving. Like at one time, shoplifting, for example, it's just the attitude to crime in general. That one time, if you said, "Oh, give me an image of a shoplifter," it'd be somebody surreptitiously hiding something in their jacket and trying to sneak out of the shop. Now these people are going into shops and literally filling up a bag or taking loads of things out, just brazenly walking out.
Shameless, yeah.
And that shows how society has changed. And I think you're right about society in the sense that once you get to a tipping point, that once obeying the rules and playing by the law is the stupid option, it starts to fall apart. Because if you're working in a shop, and I go back to this story, I saw two old ladies who in Staffordshire who work in a shop near me, and they said people come in every day stealing, threatening them with things. And what they said, the money that they earn for doing 10 hours work, people are just brazenly walking out the shop with. So why work for 10 hours? That's the problem. It's
you're the mug if you work on a low wage and you pay your taxes, and you might as well stay at home and, as you say, steal those steaks from Co-op and those jars of Gold Blend and all the rest of it. And it is a little bit of a breakdown, isn't it? Can it be fixed?
It could be fixed, I think, if we, as a society as a whole, we decided to get a grip of this. In the sense,
And it starts at school, right?
It starts at the highest levels of government, that we say to people, right, we're going to give you fair warning here. If you commit more than 3 crimes, you're going to jail. There are people walking around who they call hyperprolific criminals who've got 50, 100 convictions. Now, if you've got 50 or 100 convictions, the police only solve 1% of thefts. That means you've done thousands of crimes. So we need to be quite brutal with these people. None of this, look at the government now. Oh, we won't have any prison sentences for shoplifting. Well, just carry on shoplifting then, you know.
Yeah.
So the highest levels, they need to say to people, you carry a knife, you steal, you rob, you rape, you're going to go into jail, and we're going to make enough prison places for you to go into. We need to give teachers the authority to get a grip. So troublemakers, too often teachers have to put up with the most appalling behaviour. And we need to sort of teach people, I suppose, in school, this is what being a parent is about. Being a parent is not about just being a mate, it's about getting a grip, disciplining your child, making them, turn them into a good citizen. So I think there's all sorts of things that me and you could sit down and write them down and have a policy with that in a week. But we've got slack politicians who believe all this woke nonsense, and the results that we can see are from decades of this mismanagement.
I was reading online last night, and a commentator was saying that we used to have a high trust, low crime society, and that now we've got the opposite. They cited mass immigration. Is that a valid point?
Absolutely. And I'll tell. And I was with Mike Graham the other day. The biggest statistic, I got this from The Spectator, that in 1951 in London, which had 8 million people, so there's 9 million now, so there's no real change in numbers. In 1951, there were 214 robberies reported in that year. There are 214 robberies reported every 2 days in London now. So what has changed since 1951? It is the makeup. We brought people into this country who come from lawless places where robbery, fraud, rape are acceptable things, and we've got to be honest about this. And for the last 2 decades, I revealed, I'm part of the problem, me. I revealed in the 90s the amount of street robberies that were committed by young black men. The commissioner at the time, Paul Condon, released those stats, and of course it was set up on immediately. Racism and all this institutional racism comes from that. And then the powers that be seized on the tragic murder of Stephen Lawrence and loaded that on the police and blamed them. And for years they've been covering up who's committing crime. And I always say, all my great-grandfathers were in the First World War fighting for this nation, either on the trenches or in a mine. How many people in prison have got the same provenance as me? And we've got to face that fact. And what they do is they lie about it, they cover it up. Luckily, because of stations like Talk, we can actually discuss these matters now. But it has been for many, many years, the truth about crime has been concealed, and it's really been wicked on the part of politicians.
Meanwhile, Mike Neville's, the Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, says Labour got it wrong on migration. Is this too little too late in terms of the PM acknowledging the legacy of the Blair years and also, of course, 14 years of Tory rule?
Starmer's a cynical politician. All he cares about is votes. He doesn't believe what he's saying. The only thing I've agreed with Keir Starmer in all the times in office, he said, we're an island of strangers. Now, I come from a...
Which is, by the way, a line that he didn't write in one of his speeches, for which he then apologised.
I agree. And this is a nonsense. This is the shocking...
So the only good thing he said...
He has apologised for. Because I come from... My hometown is Bolton. There are 2 towns in Bolton. You've got everybody else, and then you've got a Muslim community, and the 2 sides do not meet. It is an island of strangers, and lots of northern towns and in the Midlands are the same as that. So the only thing he said that's the truth, he then retracted. And I think the only reason he's gone on about immigration is because he can see the polls that Reform are going to wipe them out, and that he has no care at all. He'd rather have completely open borders, in my view.
Well, here's a question for you. Can traditional values be enforced? Can we bring back law and order to the streets? Can we recalibrate into being a low-crime, high-trust society? Or is the genie out of the bottle? What hope is there for this country? That's next.
I know, because I've been told by two separate people, that when Sir Keir sacked people a couple of weeks ago, he didn't even have the leadership to phone them up himself. He got other people to do it. I think that's weak leadership. I really do. And just then you play that video. I mean, he doesn't really. He's so cardboard, isn't he? He just doesn't really speak for the people. I just cannot warm to him, and I thought I would do.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Lots of texts coming in across a range of issues. Sharon says, good morning, Mark. Can we not get rid of Starmer now? I cannot stand the man, period. Sharon in Staffordshire. Well, that is the topic of today's Dolan's Dispatch in just 40 minutes' time. It's about Starmer. Have this Labour government got a death wish, and how long can he cling on to power? That's at 8 a.m. Don't miss it. Christina, hi, Mark. I hear that Sadiq Khan is thinking about trying for Starmer's role. This must never happen. Morning, Mark. I've been waiting all night to text you. Love your show, says Kate in the Wirral. Kate, thank you so much for your incredible support and your diligence as a listener to the show, and it's great to have you on board. Hev says, good morning, Mark. Talking about care jobs in care homes is an issue, but so many of those homes are private businesses. The owners do very well out of them. The staff could be paid more. It's about greed and profit. And Rich, hi, Mark, digital ID will be used by Labour to introduce a personal carbon tax. It's interesting, isn't it, Mike Neville, retired Scotland Yard Detective Chief Inspector? We talk about the skills gap, that we bring people who are low skilled into the country because they need to work in care homes. Well, if it paid £25 an hour to work in a care home, there would be a queue of people at the job centre to take up that role. And that's what we need to do, is look again at the business model of this country and make it pay to work.
Yeah, absolutely. We do need to pay. And that's a pride thing. I come from a really working class area, and it would be shameful not to work. My grandfather, he's very socialist, but the idea that if you would off work for more than 2 weeks would be an absolute outrage to him. But the crazy model we have here is we're bringing people in, we need an NHS nurse, so we'll bring in a nurse from Africa or somewhere in Europe or whatever else. That sounds great. They'll pay their tax. People say, as long as they pay their taxes. But when they bring 3 and 4 dependents who have to go to school, get free NHS treatment, all this sort of thing, it is an absolute crazy model that they introduced. But the Tories were guilty of that, and Labour were guilty of that.
Yes, and it's a net cost to the Treasury. And even if they don't bring family members, if one low-skilled worker comes here, yes, we appreciate what they do, and good luck to them. They're trying to improve their lives. You would do the same.
Absolutely.
I would do the same. But it's a mad system that encourages this, because even an individual that's a low-skilled labour person working in the care sector or elsewhere, picking fruit, you name it, well, they're likely to be having some degree of in-work benefits, and they will still be a net cost to the taxpayer in the course of their lifetime. And in the case of somebody that works in a care home on, let's say, just above minimum wage, it's been calculated that by the time they reach 90, the cost to the taxpayer is £1 million for that person in their life, and plenty of people do live to 90. So we need to have that conversation. We need to wake up and smell the coffee. Can I ask you also about this story? Let's have a look at Ian Huntley, if we can, Mike Neville.
Yeah.
Jail chiefs have given double child killer Ian Huntley his Xbox back. This, of course, is a games console, for those that aren't familiar. He lost his privileges after he seemed to taunt his victims in a red top. The number 10 Man United-style shirt was an apparent reference to his 10-year-old victims, Holly Wells and Jessica Chapman. I mean, it's not exactly breaking news. This is a cruel and
was a
disgusting,
wicked man. I mean, for those who don't remember, it's 2002. He killed the 2 girls in Soham in Cambridgeshire, brazenly pretended he'd helped them, and then he was found guilty of killing these 2, as I said, these 2 10-year-old girls. In my view, I would be the hangman. He shouldn't be playing Xbox. He should have been swinging at the end of a rope. How much has he cost us over time, Huntley? And why
30,
is it
30 grand a year at least?
Well, I would suggest a lot more than that. He should be locked in the deepest, darkest dungeon and allowed to read the Bible. That's it. Why are we absolutely giving him anything? Why has he got any privileges whatsoever? That man should be on... If we're going to keep these people alive, then he can have bread and water, he can have a copy of the Bible, and he can live in a dungeon. It's just outrageous, and I just think people see that. He committed the most wicked child murders, and he's living the life of Riley.
And God knows how the families of his victims feel
it's just terrible.
when they see that that headline. Let's have also another look at this other story. The shocking moment that brazen shoplifters piled bottles of booze into a Deliveroo bag and casually walk out. The concerning footage shared by Robert Jenrick on Facebook shows 2 thugs hit a local Waitrose in Clerkenwell, London. The Shadow Justice Secretary posted a clip with the caption, "This is the reality of Sadiq Khan's London. It's a complete and utter disgrace." Well, I've got a little corner shop that I love to visit of an evening, and the other night I went in there and needed a couple of bits and bobs, and unfortunately the door was locked, and I thought, oh no, are they already closed? I need half a pound of butter and maybe a beer. And then the lady came like rushing over, and then she unlocked the door, and I said, "Oh, sorry, are you closed?" And she said, "No, I just have to lock now the door at 7 p.m. every night." And I thought there's a terrible thing, because groups will come steaming in of an evening and just help themselves with impunity, which is against the law and it's deeply wrong. It's also traumatic for the shop worker to witness that criminality, and it's dangerous for her because are they carrying knives, all the rest of it. If you live in a country where there is a security tag on a jar of Nescafe Gold Blend, you're not a proper country anymore, are you?
No, absolutely. We were discussing this earlier about the shoplifter. People are just brazen now and going in there. But these people know there's no consequences because, as I say, the police are solving 1% of theft. 1%. It's absolutely incredible. So you're a thief, you know, you've got 99 times out of 100 chance of getting away with it. And you know, even if you go to a court, that you'll get some 10-bob sentence, you'll get some community order or a tag or some rubbish, and the government will trump these tags. I looked at things like tags. Only about 20% of the breaches have anything done about them. So you've got a tag on it, you're out when you're on your curfew. And that 20% where something's done, it doesn't mean you're arrested. It means that somebody might come round and say, you shouldn't have done that. So they know there's no consequences. As I said, there's people out there with hundreds of previous convictions still walking the street. And all these politicians share some blame. If you look at one of the most ridiculous things, Theresa May, possibly the most worst Home Secretary ever, who reduced this. Thieving under £200 is just now a minor crime where you basically get a speeding ticket equivalent.
Yeah.
That really, the thieves know what, I'll steal 199 quid 20 times a day.
There's a couple of problems, right? You want tougher law and order, longer sentences, and a culture of zero tolerance policing. That's, I think, what the vast majority of my viewers and listeners want. It's going to take resource, isn't it? If you and I were in charge, okay, and let's just dream that I'm the Prime Minister, right, with a majority of 700, right, I can do whatever I like, got a blank cheque, and you are my Home Secretary. The issue you've got is you need financial firepower, don't you? Because you're going to need prison places, you're going to need prison guards, you need more cops, you need to put more money into the justice system and the judiciary so that they can process these criminals more quickly. It's money, money, money. And it's money we ain't got.
No, I think it's more than money. It's willpower. So at the moment, we haven't got the willpower. So the civil service, if you were appointed to be the Home Secretary, I'd sack everybody in the Home Office because those people have the woke ideas and they'll obstruct everything that me and you want to do. I would get rid of most of the judges and reappoint people who would do things. Have it like America where the people can vote in who the judges are. Because at the moment, these left-wingers are appointed who think, this this criminal is a victim of society. So I don't think it's just money, it's the physical will. And I don't think the civil service or the current judiciary or the senior police officers really believe that putting people in prison is a good thing. So they're doing everything, they would resist everything. And I think a new government, that would be their biggest challenge. Now, money we can find from places. Let's sack everybody who's involved in DEI jobs and make them a prison guard. We'll just divert the resources that we have. So I think it could be done, but the biggest challenge would be the will to do it.
The will to do it, indeed. If you're new Home Secretary, Mike, will you come and see us again soon? Because you've dropped more than a few truth bombs this morning, and we've enjoyed your company. By the way, you do these tours of like show.
I do crime tours around. Look, people are fascinated by crime, so I take people around and show them where the very first Scotland Yard was, where famous murder cases were, and all this sort of thing. It's just that I find that ladies in particular, the more gory the crime, the more enjoyment there is.
Mrs. Dolan, she loves a serial killer, let me tell you. I don't know why she chose me. I'm much too nice.
Well, who knows?
I've got no edge to me.
My mother used to say, if everybody had to write their worst secret on their forehead, no one would leave the house.
That's a very good point. Well, listen, your secret is that you're a wise man, and we really enjoyed your company this morning. So I look forward to catching up again soon. Thank you for your wise words. Listen, folks, lots more to come. Next up, this is not a drill. According to the polls, Nigel Farage will be our next Prime Minister. The only question now is the scale of his victory. Full analysis next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hi Mark says Rich, digital ID will be used by Labour to introduce a personal carbon tax. Don't forget Labour under the spotlight, and particularly Sir Keir Starmer in Dolan's dispatch at 8 a.m. It's a fiery one. It may get me cancelled, Dean. And if so, good. Also, hi Mark, I policed in the 80s, 90s and 2000s, says Ian. I spent all my service operational and my last 15 years on response. Your guest Mike is talking a lot of sense about criminality in this country. And Gary, hi Mark, love the show. Gary from Canterbury here. I agree with Mike Neville. The problem is we have in society is that at the moment people know they can get away with the things that they're doing, but more importantly, the police do not get anyone backing them up when they make a decision. That's very true, Gary. It's a really fair point. Who'd be a cop in 2025? Vernon is in Staffordshire. Vernon, let's talk about low-skilled labour. We need people to work in the NHS and care homes, don't we?
No, we don't, Mark. It's a fallacy. It's a fallacy that is always portrayed, and at some point we've got to jump off this magic roundabout. If you bring in low-skilled labour, then you will always have a need for low-skilled labour. Organisations and companies need to pay the right wages. The government need to invest in youth. Youth is where the issue is. We need to get those people that are unemployed and who are disillusioned, we need to get them into work. And we need to just say quite simply, there are no benefits. You work. And if you work, you'll get a trade. And if you get a trade, then ultimately you will have a career. At some point, we've got to stop this.
And I think the public don't know, do they, just how, awful the balance sheet is when it comes to low-skilled mass immigration, Vernon, that it costs the taxpayer money.
Mark, they are takers. Yes, they are not contributors. And the long and the short of it is that the trusts who are running these hospitals are making millions.
Yeah.
And yet it's not filtering down to the grassroots. It's very simple. If you pay people proper wages, they pay tax.
Well, I totally agree. I mean, if it was 25 quid an hour to work in a care home, there'd be a stampede to the job centre, wouldn't there?
But it's ultimately joined up thinking. But it's the same old rubbish. We need low-skilled labour. People aren't going to do the jobs. Well, they're not going to do the jobs if the benefits are available. Stop the benefits. Tell the young people, benefits are not a career choice. I'd be the best politician in the world. I'd give 6 months' notice and say in 6 months' time, unless you are handicapped or you cannot work, there are 0 benefits. And, after this 2-child cap changing, it's madness. My children, I have 6. I pay for them. If you want children, you pay for them. It's not my job. It's not the government's job. Scrap all benefits. People say, but I'll lose the house. I said, well, if you're a proper person like that, you'll get up at 3 in the morning, you'll leave at 4, you'll get your job done to pay the bills. And if you can't pay your bills, you'll get a second job, you'll get a third job. Got to change the culture. It's ridiculous in this country. For me, Mark, I'm a high net worth individual who earns significant sums of money. A third goes to pay for get, a third goes to pay my tax, and the other third goes to pay for my family. What's the point? Why should I work 18 hours a day?
You're absolutely right. And I think the key word there you said, apologies for viewers and listeners struggling to hear Vernon, the line was breaking up, but I didn't want to interrupt him. The key word there was culture. The culture of this country has to change. It's a culture that we need to adopt where we follow the rules, we obey the law, we participate in the values and traditions of this country, and we work. It's the W word. There are almost 10 million people in Britain of working age who are not active in the economy. That is a national scandal. Vernon, enjoyed that call. Let's speak again soon. According to a brand new poll, Reform UK are now on track to win the next election. Nigel Farage will be Britain's next Prime Minister. The question now is by what scale? I'm delighted to be asking the founder of Delta Poll, Joe Twyman. Hello, Joe.
Hello, Mark.
So what is the significance of this latest poll?
Well, it depends on how you want to interpret it. The reality is that actually it's not particularly significant. It's simply replicating the kind of trends that we've seen in polling, not just for the last few weeks, but for the last few months. Reform UK have led in every national poll since the local elections, and they've clearly been the success story in the year, well, just over the year now, since the last general election. So this is simply repeating the kind of trends that we have seen, and so we see that Reform UK are on for a large number of seats, but not enough, it's suggested, to make it to a majority in the House of Commons. But the really important thing about this to remember is that polling is only ever a snapshot of public opinion at the specific time. It's not intended to be, nor should it be used as a prediction for where we will be in a month, in a year, or at the next election. A lot of things can change, and that may mean that Reform do even better. But it may mean the opposite. The point is, we don't know, and the polling isn't intended to show that.
Is there a danger for Reform that they've peaked too early, Joe, given the fact that the next election likely won't be for the next 3 or 4 years?
Yeah, an enormous danger. And that really is the most important question in British politics for the next few years. The degree to which Reform can build or even maintain the success they've managed up until now, and the degree to which they can turn performance in the polls to performance in the polling booth, turning percentages in surveys into actual votes at the ballot box. Because it's all very well performing well in between elections, you need to do it at the election. You and I are old enough to remember the SDP, a party that in the early 1980s won more than 50% of the vote in some polls. 9 years later, they were being beaten by the monster raving loony party in a by-election. So politics can change. It's a very, very different situation from the 1980s, and the SDP are not Reform UK. But that's an illustration of how these things can change.
Although it's clear, isn't it, Joe, that as he begins the Labour Party conference next couple of days, so Keir Starmer will, of course, be having his keynote speech this week. Starmer will be focusing on Reform UK as his main electoral threat now.
Yes, certainly if you were Labour, you would be more concerned about Reform UK than certainly the Conservatives. But that doesn't mean you can write off the Conservatives. And similarly, it doesn't mean you can write off the Liberal Democrats either. A party with more than 70 MPs in the House of Commons, of course. And so Labour is fighting on all of these fronts. It hasn't been doing well. Keir Starmer has not been doing well personally. The party has not been doing well in the polls. The Conservatives are in a very difficult situation. It will be interesting to see how they perform at their conference. But all of this could have an impact. It could have a lasting impact. It could have a short impact. The point is, we don't know. There's still a lot of politics to happen between now and the next general election.
But, Joe, you've got to help me with this. I just don't see a path back to power for the Conservatives. Do you?
If the last 10, 15 years of British politics have taught us anything, it's that nothing can be guaranteed, but similarly nothing can be ruled out. I think it is extremely difficult for the Conservatives at the moment. I think if they are going to find a route back to power, then it's got to be about based on economic competence. The economy remains, or at least the cost of living remains, the most important issue for the country as a whole. Immigration is more important for Reform UK supporters, but for the country as a whole, it's the cost of living. And so if they can present an effective position on that people actually believe, then that could be a possible route back. But that is a difficult challenge and a long project to deal with.
We know, don't we, in the run-up to the last election that Labour tried not to reveal too much about their plans for power. It was a very vague offer to the public, essentially with the headline being, "We're not the Tories," and it was successful for Sir Keir Starmer. Are Reform taking a risk by doing quite the opposite and giving a very detailed overview of their policies, including what we saw this week regarding the remigration of the many thousands of people who entered Britain as part of the Boris wave?
Well, they're giving a very detailed analysis of some of their policies, particularly around immigration, which is very much their home turf, if you like. And so you can see why we're getting so much detail on that. But we're not getting as much detail on other important issues. When you look at, for instance, the NHS, another very important issue for people in this country, or the cost of living specifically. Yes, it's being linked to immigration. So we're hearing that if immigration is solved, then this will solve the NHS, this will solve the economy, etc., etc. But whether that's convincing enough come a general election, when people start to really focus on the issues that are important to them rather than to the same degree the issues that they perceive to be important to the country, that could have an impact. So I think generally speaking, what they've been doing so far, playing to their home turf and appealing to their base and hoping to bring more people on board is sensible. But the degree to which that can be maintained in a general election campaign, with the strength in depth or lack thereof that the Reform may find they have, I think that will be an interesting question.
Joe, before I let you go, they have an impressive lead in the polls, Reform UK. It could actually, the real figure could be higher, couldn't it? Because of those shy Reform voters who are planning on lending their vote to Nigel Farage, but don't want to tell a woke graduate in a hoodie that on the high street.
Sorry, tell a woke graduate in a hoodie? Is this the 1980s? That's not how we conduct polling.
I need to update my. But isn't it people?
That's a very nice idea, Mark. But I think you perhaps should update your thinking to what we regard as the 21st century. It is possible, because all polls are subject to the margin of error, and we cannot abolish the margin of error in the same way that we cannot abolish the laws of gravity, because they're all determined by probability. Yes, it's true that polls are subject to a margin of error, but I think if the last few weeks have taught us anything, it's that if there's one thing Reform supporters are not, it's shy. But it may be the case that there are people out there, but that's where we.
Well, what about I'm thinking about those sort of moderate Tory voters who are wobbling a little bit, but may not want to admit, especially in sort of dinner party circles, that Farage has got their vote.
And that's why we give them the anonymity of a poll and ask other questions, not just voting intention, in order to determine how they may vote. We certainly don't. I don't think we've ever sent out people in hoodies to conduct polls at Delta Poll or my previous company, YouGov. That would not work. That would not work very effectively. Generally speaking, if someone approaches you wearing a hoodie and just starts asking you questions, it's probably not as part of a scientific poll.
Run a mile if you see a hoodie, a cagoule, a North Face jacket or any such device. Listen, Joe, really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you for your analysis and expertise. This is the founder of the Delta Poll, Joe Twyman, who has essentially a kind of, with conditions attached, claim that Reform will be our next government. But as he said, it's all to play for, and it will be a long time until the next election. Next up, digital ID. Could it derail Keir Starmer's premiership? And we're going to talk about the royal family as well. How do you solve a problem like Prince Andrew? All of that is next.
and they have to go around apologising for everything. Because as much as Helen Whately can try and say, well, we inherited a dreadful situation from Tony Blair and Gordon Brown, I mean, people are sort of looking at their watches and going, sorry, how far back are we meant to go?
I know.
How much responsibility are you just casting to the wind?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, let me tell you, this is not a drill. The monologue is back in exactly 10 minutes' time. It is Dolan's dispatch, and it's all about this Labour government. Do they have a death wish? And how long can Starmer cling on? Dropping some truth bombs at 8 o'clock. I might get cancelled. But Maureen's not happy. She said, Mark, don't get cancelled. I've missed having you on the radio. Well, look, thank you so much for that, Maureen. There is no show without you. Thank you for watching and or listening. Great show, says Chris in Sussex. And what a great call that chap was talking about cancelling benefits. Vernon, absolutely spot on with those comments. That is a fix, isn't it, for the worklessness crisis? No benefits and it pays to work. An old-fashioned idea, it might just catch on. Now, let's talk about the Prime Minister, because he's facing a revolt in relation to his plan to roll out compulsory digital ID. Front page of the Weekend, Britcard digital ID facing major backlash from Labour, leaving the Prime Minister's plan in peril. Let's get reaction from a very old friend of mine, the brilliant journalist and broadcaster Linda Jubilee. Hello, Linda.
Hello, Mark.
It's really good to see you. Why has Keir Starmer decided to adopt this policy, and why has he announced it this week, do you think?
Well, I think he's got to do one big thing to show that he is at least attempting to tackle the migrant crisis. And he has to do it this week because it's the week of the conference. And now that's compounded by the fact that he has a challenge covertly, semi-covertly, from Andy Burnham. So he's got right behind this digital ID card. But let me say, I've got no problem with ID cards. I think this battle, this polarised debate over ID cards is a proxy battle for actually people who say, I don't want an ID card because it's un-British. Now, the fact of the matter is, I lived in Hong Kong for 5 years. I had, it's a hard card, not unlike the card that the Labour government tried to introduce about 10 years ago, I think. And it was no problem because I had one card, one number. In this country, it's so infuriating. You've got an NHS number, an NI number, a UTR number, a passport number. I mean, all these numbers are just so inconvenient when actually you want one number that works for you. That is a common sense situation. However, people are now really, really unhappy about this because they think it's un-British to have a digital ID. The biggest problem, we've got two big problems with digital ID. The first first is it will do the square root of diddly squat to deal with the immigration crisis. And also, there are security issues that we have to deal with. But frankly, we are in the middle of a digital world. We have to find solutions to these problems. Otherwise, we'll just be like King Canute, trying to hold back the waves.
However, with the left split on this, and with an unlikely sort of political consensus between Corbynites like Richard Burgon and Nigel Farage, leader of Reform UK, is it likely that this policy will never see the light of day?
That's entirely possible. But it wasn't supposed to be a fundamental, game-changing policy. Let's not forget, this is performative politics. This was brought in, I believe, as a gesture. What I'm saying is I don't have a problem with it, but I do not believe that this government will get it in before the next election. And you can combine that with, I think, the latest petition, which suggests that there are 1.5 million people who've signed a petition against it.
Now, Linda, let me cover another story and topic that you've reported on over many years as a broadcaster and journalist. And this is in the Times newspaper. Prince Andrew and his massages on Epstein's private jet. We've seen his ex-wife lose a lot of her patronages of various charities, Sarah Ferguson, because of the rather affectionate emails that she wrote to Jeffrey Epstein following his conviction for child sex trafficking. So the pair of them now are incredibly toxic and a major public relations headache for the king.
Absolutely. And I was on air last weekend talking about this, and I said, this is a pack of cards. It will just go down now. It's like the domino effect. And sure enough, midweek, Sarah lost her position at 7 major charities. It wasn't just that she wrote affectionate letters or emails to Jeffrey Epstein. When you call him a supreme friend, after he is convicted of paedophile activities, what do you expect to happen with those children's charities you, in fact, act as an ambassador for? She's clearly out in the cold. And actually, that couple should be in Siberia because of their contamination effect to the royal family. I mean, this goes back years and years, and it's not just Jeffrey Epstein. I've actually met Sarah Ferguson. I think she's a kind person who is easy to talk to and very fair. But the fact of the matter is she lacks judgment. She is naive. She has no financial management skills. But Prince Andrew is exactly the same, maybe worse. He's a decent father. He loves his ex-wife, apparently still loves his ex-wife, and he loves his children. But he is chaotic and he has a huge sense of entitlement, which is actually the name of the most recent book.
Yes, well, I think that's very, very telling. How does King Charles address this issue? You can't strip them of many more titles, can he? Neither of them are HRH anymore. They're not frontline serving royals. Andrew's not a frontline serving royal. He can't stop being his brother. And so I just wonder what's next. Could he be turfed out of the Royal Lodge?
Yeah, I think that is the next step, actually. And what we must remember is the firm, as it calls itself, is a family. Of course he can't ostracise his brother. But he has to do something to make sure, absolutely categorically, that they do not take part in public life and they do not attend public events. They need to be closed off and kept to themselves. Now, there is a rumour going the rounds that Prince Andrew does, in fact, have a kind of mini palace in the Gulf to which he will retire. Now, I think the answer with both of them, Sarah and Prince Andrew, is keep them close to home. Do not let them go floating around the world, living off their past potential, not their potential, their past attachments to being working royals. That's a disaster area. That's what you've seen happen to Meghan and Harry. The fact of the matter is, Meghan and Harry also are living off their connection to the royal family, to our royal family. Do you imagine that Prince Harry and Meghan would be getting anywhere in the world, the really really tough world of documentaries and filmmaking and anything else, political commentary, if they did not have an attachment to the royal family.
You are so right. Linda, great to see you again. Catch up very soon. Next up, how long can Labour cling to power? That's Dolan's dispatch.
For your extraordinary graciousness. And to William and Kate, thank you so much. It's been so great.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
That long music bed, that's called doing an Alan Brazil. Don't worry, I haven't just rolled in from the pub. Welcome to Talk. I am Mark Dolan. This is Talk Breakfast. Top of the morning to you. Your weekend starts here. So look, so much to get through over the next 2 hours. As Labour prepare for their annual conference, we have a governing party in total disarray. Staffers at number 10 running for the hills, the rolling out of a controversial digital ID policy, and senior figures within Labour, including Sadiq Khan, Angela Rayner and Andy Burnham, lining up to replace the Prime Minister after just 14 months in office. So how long can Sir Keir Starmer cling to power? We'll get views from across the political spectrum. All the big stories of the day, the front pages, and in a Talk Breakfast exclusive, in spite of amassing over 20 million viewers at the height of their fame and popularity, legendary comedy double act Cannon and Ball cruelly ignored by ITV during their 70th anniversary celebrations. I'll be joined live on the show this morning by comedy icon Tommy Cannon. That's at 9:30. This is not a drill. One half of Cannon and Ball live on the show will celebrate their career, and he'll be talking about his time in showbiz, his deep friendship with Bobby Ball, and why this genius double act has been airbrushed from history. And over the next 2 hours, my priority is your opinions. You can text the word TALK and your message to 87222. Book your place on the show. Deborah is taking your call this morning. She's fabulous. This is top level. This is a premium producer, folks. So give her a call and she'll get you on the radio. 0344 499 1000. Of course, it's not just radio. We're in-app. We're online. We're on TV. We're on radio. We're everywhere. This is Talk. So let's talk. Better straighten my tie. We are on the telly. Going to have a fiery political debate this hour with the voice of the left and the voice of the right tearing chunks out of each other about this Labour government. But first, at this time, as always on the show, it is Dolan's Dispatch. Does this government have a death wish? A needless war on farmers and on pensioners? The greedy national insurance tax raid on employers, which is causing unemployment, destroying investment and wiping out growth? Does this government have a death wish with the spiteful VAT hike on private schools, which hasn't improved the life of kids in comprehensives by 1%, but has turned the lives of thousands of kids in the private sector upside down as they join the waiting list for oversubscribed state schools? Does this government have a death wish, labelling people protesting at the tragedy of Southport as far right, and the thousands of patriotic people on marches who want to celebrate this country and recover what it used to be, calling them dangerous thugs? Does this government have a death wish with the war on free speech, which reached its nadir with a much-loved television comedy writer, Father Ted creator Graham Linehan, arrested by 5 armed cops at Heathrow Airport for thinking that men can't be women? Does this government have a death wish with a war on enterprise via the axing of popular 0 hours contracts, red tape on business, and the ability for feckless new employees to claim bereavement leave, unfair dismissal, and sick pay from day one? Let's see what that does to economic growth. Does this government have a death wish, love bombing the death cult that is Hamas by recognising the state of Palestine, which this wicked medieval group of terrorists currently govern? But just when you thought things couldn't get worse and that this government couldn't have more of a death wish, our cervix-fee Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, has said, "Hold my beer." Now, the embargoed press release from Number 10, I can exclusively reveal, stated that compulsory digital ID would be rolled out across the United Kingdom. It was going to be a compulsory digital ID. That was the press release. But even rumours of this authoritarian, undemocratic measure caused such anger and constellation. By the time Starmer reached the podium yesterday mid-morning, whilst I was on air here at Talk, they changed the cell completely and repositioned it as anyone who wants to work will need a digital ID. So the policy, in all of its essence, didn't even remain intact for 24 hours and failed to make the full journey from conception to birth. But given that you will need a digital ID in order to earn a living and provide for your family, then of course mandatory it absolutely is. As one of my brilliant audience members mentioned yesterday on the show, the argument for this policy, this awful scheme, is identical to those wretched vaccine mandates during COVID. Oh, you don't have to have the jab. No, we're not making you have the jab unless you want to fly, go to the cinema to watch the latest Mission Impossible, or have a pint at your local Spoons. Otherwise, you don't have to have the jab. But if you want a normal life, you absolutely do. So all of those battles that we had during the pandemic, when we saw the worst state authoritarianism in the history of this country, with policies for which we're still paying the price economically and societally, well, they were well worth having, because it seems that the pandemic was just a dry run, a dress rehearsal for a full-scale, systematic assault on our individual freedom and on our status as sovereign human beings. Sir Keir Starmer is the king of the reverse Midas touch, is he not? In fact, he's so reliably wrong on every issue that you could nearly set your watch to it. Unlike a broken clock, Starmer is not even right twice a day. Now, we know that the left are instinctively authoritarian. It's all about big state. The citizen must conform, concede and comply for the greater good. Equality over effort, equity over just reward, and divisive, undue favouritism towards protected groups in our society based on immutable characteristics and cultural identity. While Rachel from Accounts is crushing enterprise with her punishing budgets, and it will get worse when she next takes to the dispatch box on November the 26th, be afraid, be very afraid. As one of my callers said yesterday, it's almost like they want to bankrupt the country. They truly have a death wish. But why do they want to bankrupt Britain? Maybe, as this caller suggested, maybe it means that then they can have emergency measures and even more control. Because that's why the left loved COVID and pushed through those ruinous measures most enthusiastically. And that's why they love net zero, which is nothing more than communism in a green dress. It's no surprise that Starmer has announced this digital ID scheme, which is the wet dream of leftist Fabian Society-inspired ideologues. Given it was a former Labour Prime Minister who tried and failed to roll this out in the early 2000s, you do wonder whether it's Tony Blair running the country, not Sir Keir after all. And it's almost poetic that the main argument for this policy is the biggest lie of all, that it will stop illegal immigration. So if the best reason for doing something is one that we know to be provably untrue, then what we have on our hands here is a policy built on a hill of sand, built on mythology, built on spin, built on a lie. It will cost billions, and it won't improve anyone's lives by any measure. It won't make illegal immigrants less illegal. It won't make crooked bosses who employ them any less crooked. And be careful what you wish for, because if it were to be in any way successful at discouraging illegal work, then those folk who are here illegally will likely turn to crime. A view confirmed yesterday on the show by the former head of Britain's border control. Given that the scheme is so unpopular, so costly, so time-consuming, so unworkable, so exposed to hackers and foreign governments that wish us ill, and given that figures from across the political spectrum, including Richard Bergen on the left and Nigel Farage on the right, have united against it, I don't think that this scheme will ever see the light of day. I suspect it's DOA, dead on arrival, a bit like Sir Keir's premiership. This policy isn't even politically legitimate, given the fact that it wasn't in their manifesto. What other egregious policies have they got up their sleeve that they haven't warned us about? This lot do have a death wish. And don't worry, at the next election, or maybe sooner, that wish will be granted. Your reaction, 0344 499 1000. Do this government have a death wish? How long can Starmer cling on to power? Mary is in Hemel Hempstead. Hello, Mary.
Morning, Mark.
Mary, first of all, your reaction to Dolan's dispatch. I think that this digital ID card policy is not going to see the light of day. What's your view?
I quite agree with you, actually. But the thing that worries me is that we seem to have a dictatorship now, because nothing seems to be going past through Parliament. He just announces things that he's going to do, and their party, and they just plough ahead with it. I mean, there was no real debate on the Chagos Islands, for example. The people of Chagos were never consulted. There was no sort of no debate about him running after Hamas and supporting them. It just seems to go from one thing to another.
We weren't told that taxes would go even higher than they were under the Conservatives, or that there would be a national insurance tax raid which would kill jobs, spike inflation and destroy growth.
Yes, that's right. He particularly, I mean, his denials are constant, and he seems to breeze through everything. All the corruption when he first came into power, when we found all the things that he'd been up to, that he was preaching that he was against. And you're talking about the vaccine passports, or whatever they were. How many care workers lost their jobs because they refused to have the vaccine?
Yeah.
Now and I often wondered since, are those still enforced?
It's a great question, and how many of those people have been reinstated? I think they should be reinstated and also reimbursed for lost income.
Well, I know of a couple of ladies, Irish ladies they were wonderful in the caring business. They lost their jobs because they refused the vaccine passports, and they've gone on to other jobs.
Indeed, and of course, back in the day, some nurses quit the NHS for fear that they'd be forced to have the jab. In the end, the Health Secretary backed down, but it was the threat of a vaccine enforcement on some workers in the NHS that caused them to leave the profession altogether.
Yes, quite. But the problem is we now so mistrust our politicians, and this lot are particularly mistrustful, that when they introduce something like these ID cards, we all start thinking, and what else, and what's involved?
This is the issue, and the problem with the ID cards, I would say, Mary, is that they might look innocuous on the surface, but they can be, the infrastructure is established and used against us by future administrations. That's the problem. It's the potential that these cards have to really control our lives, and that's why it's a non-starter.
I know. I mean, look how the banking business, how you can be easily debanked now.
Yeah, it's a very fair point. Would a change at the top be good news for Britain? Do you think that Starmer being replaced by someone like Andy Burnham, Angela Rayner or Sadiq Khan would make things better?
No, unfortunately. The problem I find is that, and I've said this with the Conservative Party as well, we don't know who they, and particularly this lot, they've got a lot of MPs, but are there any that are better, that are out amongst their MPs, but are not given a chance?
Yeah, you have to wonder, don't you? I don't think that the quality is there within the Parliamentary Labour Party, which is why there have been so few reshuffles and why there's so little talent on the front bench.
I don't think there's much in either of them, the Tory or Labour, because they've all come from a similar background. They're not, most of them are not business. Well, I don't suppose there are very few businessmen. They have no experience of real life. They've just gone from university into the party, and worked their way up through that way, and they don't really know what the ordinary man in the street deals with, and they don't seem to have much in the way of common sense.
Mary, words of wisdom. We'll catch up soon. Mary in Hemel Hempstead there. Next up, how long can Sir Keir Starmer cling on to power? Will he still be PM by Christmas? We'll hear from both sides on that next. this disgusting, wretched, evil, creepy, totalitarian document, because my message is very clear when it comes to digital ID. No, no, no.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Folks, so much to get through in the next hour and a half. This is not a drill. Comedy legend Tommy Cannon on being cruelly ignored by ITV during their 70th anniversary celebrations. He's live on the show. Comedy legend Tommy Cannon at 9:30, talking about the highs and lows of fame, his incredible relationship with his best friend Bobby, his amazing career, his success, and all the rest of it. So looking forward to that, but also looking forward to this, because just how long can Sir Keir Starmer cling on to power? Is Labour now in the full throes of a civil war? Let's get the views of two good friends of mine. I'm delighted to say, returning to the Talk studio, Luke Hildyard and Maxwell Harrison. Boys, great to see you.
Morning.
It's not, is it, Luke, the best look for the governing party about to start their annual conference to be at each other's throats like this?
Yeah, it's certainly an interesting intervention from Andy Burnham, wasn't it?
Interesting is a polite word.
I do think that it is a bit... We've got used to this climate where the Prime Minister changes every year or two, and the second things start to go...
It's like an iPhone, a new one comes out every year.
Yeah.
And we have to blame the Tories for this, don't we? They started it.
Well, that's where the trend began, right? But I think that... we've got, as I say, we've got kind of used to it, and every time things start to get a bit difficult for a prime minister or a party leader, things start to get, you get this fevered speculation. It's happening to Kemi Badenoch with the Conservatives as well. I do think that with Labour, they're only 1 year into government. Whatever you think of Keir Starmer, I think it would be pretty crazy for Labour to get rid of him. I don't think the public likes seeing this constant change of leaders. They have tried to do the unpopular stuff early on, like the national insurance contributions rise, and the thinking behind that is it brings in more tax revenue, the NHS improves, people's public service experience improves, and they start to think, OK, this is a more functional, improving country under Labour. Obviously, that's going to take time to happen. And so I just feel that it's certainly not in Labour's interest to have this massive kind of bout of introspection just 1 year into the government. And in reality, I think the Labour MPs and the Labour Party will also realise that. I don't think there's, famous last words, but I don't think there's a serious chance of Starmer being dethroned.
No, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it, Maxwell, because we know that the one abiding quality of the new Labour regime was consistency on messaging, sort of party discipline. Well, we're seeing none of that under Labour 2.0 under Starmer, aren't we?
No, but Starmer is being consistently poor. And if we go between now and next year, by next year, and let's talk about next May, Starmer's gone. Yeah, Reform's going to win around 1,500 local council electors. I mean, in outer London, Bexley, Bromley, Havering, Reform is going to pick up councils. In Wales, we're going to be the largest party. And in Caerphilly, just in a few weeks' time, that has got 13,000 votes for Labour last time around. Reform is going to absolutely smash it. And then even in Scotland, we're going to get 18. This Prime Minister is over. And even his most recent approval rating is minus 50. I mean, this isn't about, changes what the public, or we don't like, prime ministers changing every so often. This country just doesn't like this prime minister. And the fact he's attacking Burnham so strongly, the fact he's linking him to people like Truss shows he is worried. It shows that there are 80 to 100 MPs who want rid of him, and rightly so. He's finished. Let's move on to the next.
Well, Luke, I'm guessing that you wanted a Labour government. So if you want to keep one, is it not in your best interests to see Starmer replaced and get this project back on track?
As I say, I don't think that would be popular with the public. If you look at the inflection points that really brought the Tories' public esteem down when they were in government, it was around the Truss budget, but also the changes of Prime Minister. And I think, it doesn't look good. I think he's only been in the job a year. He's taken the unpopular decisions early. I think you're already starting to see some improvements. I've got a personal anecdote. I was on holiday in Cornwall in the summer. I've got young kids. They were a bit ill. Any parent, you're often going to the hospital and GP with your kids for various ailments. Was seen by a GP on holiday straight away. They advised us to go to A&E. We were seen straight away. A couple of years ago under the Tories, that just wasn't happening. So I think you can say that there are things that are improving under Labour. I think they've got to kind of stay the course and keep trying to improve
with
things.
the greatest respect, we've just
Matthew,
seen an
you're chuckling there.
I know. We've just seen an MRP poll just popped up there. Reform is going to win 311 seats. Labour going to lose 267.
I think
the reason the left don't want an election is because they know Reform is going to win. That Nigel Farage is going to be the next Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. The fact that all the things, there may be one or two good things Labour government have done, but if you talk about the big issues, pensioners, farmers, the economy, the fact that we can't put a budget together because we have a £30 billion black hole, all the big issues, Labour is on the back foot. That's why the left don't want a general election right now. They know, and that's why we have to go to elections next May when you're going to get wiped out to hell and above, and that's why Nigel's going to walk into number 10.
I think having one election, I don't think anybody wants an election 1 year after another. I don't think they actually do. People might say that in response to an opinion poll. Well, I think I think that's different to wanting a general election. I totally agree that Reform are in a very strong position in the polls. It's 4 years out from a general election. If you'd said in 2011 what's going to happen at the next general election, you'd have been getting ready for Prime Minister Ed Miliband. There's a long way to go. I mean, yesterday in Wales, you had the Reform leader pleading guilty to taking payments from Russia. But I mean, it's you've got to admit, it doesn't look great. There are things like that are going to crop up over the next 4 years. I think Reform's certainly in a strong position, but I admire your confidence in saying that Nigel Farage is going to be the next Prime Minister. I think there's a lot of water to go under the bridge between now and then.
Labour have had a lot more sleaze in the last few months than Reform have, including a corruption minister that's now being pursued for corruption charges. You've got a homelessness minister that's evicted tenants, and you've got a housing minister that didn't pay stamp duty. But apart from that, it's going very well. John is in Sutton. John, how long can Keir Starmer hang on, do you think?
Well, 18 months I'd give this government.
Oh, the government as a whole, not just Starmer?
Not just Starmer. Whatever they do, it's not going to save them, no matter who they put in charge.
And what happens over 18 months that will bring them down, do you think, John?
They're going to get totally hollowed out by Reform. They're going to get wiped out in Wales. Can you imagine the headlines the next day, Mark? Can you imagine what this Labour government have got coming from the media?
Yeah.
They're going to get absolutely wiped out in Wales. And Nigel Farage is a very canny man, and he predicted a 2027 election. And I'd say he's right.
But what about the parliamentary arithmetic, John? I hear what you're saying about the May elections, but he has an insuperable majority, and that majority is not going anywhere, and turkeys don't vote for Christmas.
I know, but the electorate, the British public, are sick of them already.
Yeah.
They won't be able to resist the demand for an election, Mark.
Well, that's interesting, and I wonder, based upon what John said there, events, dear boy, could be a factor too, such as a financial crash.
Oh, no, absolutely. I think we are 18 months away from potentially going to the IMF. The fact that last month alone we borrowed £18 billion again, we can't even put a budget together without the prospect of taxes going up. If that happens, forget any chance of actually 100 Labour MPs holding their seats. And the gilt market's at a 30-year high. Taxes at a 70-year high. This cannot continue. They will get to this break point, this country. It happens once every 100 years in British politics, wherein something big happens, quite radical. That's where reform is right now. You get it at exactly the right spot, and I completely agree with John.
But I'm looking at those parliamentary numbers. I just cannot compute how a big majority could be relinquished between now and let's say, you know, next Christmas, a year and a half from now.
But typically with Labour Party don't really do the infighting publicly. When they get rid of Starmer next May, which they will have to do because of the results in Scotland, in Wales, across, you know, the local elections, it'll be a very public fallout. Then we're going to see a fracturing of the left. You're going to go for that more Blairite, typical Labour MP, or the more extreme left-wing fraction. They will start fighting each other. They will just be two rats in a sack, and the country and the confidence will completely fall apart. And where we are now, looking at the city, they will lose their confidence too.
Oh, that's interesting. John, if there is an election in 18 months' time, how does it pan out?
Reform will win in a landslide. I'm in Carshalton and Wallington here, and I've got a Lib Dem Focus newspaper that they send out. And they state quite clearly here, the Tories are history, their main opposition is reform, and they are very worried about them, and they want to get their voters out. So, you know, they're gonna be unexpected results in places that they didn't even think they'd do well themselves, reform.
John, thank you for... Yeah, go on, let you finish your point, John.
We're heading for a reform government, and thank God for that. That's what I say.
John, call me again soon. Really enjoyed your contribution, John in Sutton there. Your reaction to that, Luke?
Yeah, I think John makes some good points. I think it was interesting what he said about the Liberal Democrats. I think that's precisely why it's quite hard to predict how an election will pan out, because Reform are leading in the polls. They're on, you know, they're typically around 30%. The 70% that aren't saying they're going to vote for reform are often quite trenchantly anti-reform. So I think, you know, I think that will actually be a very powerful message from the Lib Dems, where the Lib Dems are in power, Labour, where Labour are the sitting MP, the Greens, the SNP, Plaid Cymru, where they're the sitting MPs, and you probably will get quite a strong anti-reform vote. So I think it's very hard to predict how this is going to play out tactically. I also think a big issue for the left historically has been that it's been kind of in a bubble and sort of talks to itself a lot and sort of convinces itself that everybody shares its worldview.
And could have an argument in an empty room.
Well, yeah, exactly. But what I'm saying is, I think the right are doing that a little bit at the moment. Like, Twitter has become a bit of a right-wing echo chamber. I don't really agree with John, the idea that there's this massive public clamour for change. I think, you know, I think people are busy getting on with their lives, enjoying their families, their jobs, their free time. I don't think there's this sense of the country falling apart in the way that a lot of people on the right talk about. And I think if people in the Reform and the Tories start to convince themselves of that, I think they're in danger of losing touch with the public and sending the wrong kind of message electorally.
Have Reform peaked too soon? And will Nigel Farage get found out before the next election? That's next.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very interesting message from Steve, who says, Mark, I'm starting to think I've got it wrong about Starmer. He allows loads of illegal immigrants in, so there will be plenty of work back as a human rights lawyer when we finally get rid of the buffoon. But here's a question for you, Maxwell. Have reform peaked too soon? Because that's the view of pollster Joe Twyman, who said there's a real danger that they're so far ahead in the race that now there will be scrutiny on reform's policies, and the whole thing, by the time of the next election, may well have imploded. What do you think?
No, and I think that reason because of 2 points. One, because Labour will get worse. The introduction of digital ID, very deeply unpopular. Already this year, 31,000 men have illegally broken into our country. That number's going to go up because we know the one-in, one-out system does not work. So Labour will continue to get worse. The Conservative Party, it is dead. So that's why I'm sure that we will maintain our momentum. But on the opposite point as well is that reform is now starting to get results. If you take Kent County Council, for example, I mean, this week we announced we cut our debt by £50 million. I mean, when we won back in May, the debt was £740 million. Since our administration started, by the end of this year, financial year, the debt would have been cut by £82 million. Again, the other day, you know, we made savings of £2.5 million in home to school transport. In our full council meeting, we scrapped the climate emergency declaration, and we've already made savings between now and next 4 years of £39 million from getting rid of net zero policies. So there will be a track record. Keep on looking at places like Kent, where if you want to see what a reform government looks like, the work Lyndon Kim-Carran and Brian Collins and our brilliant cabinet and backbenchers are doing, we are getting a fantastic track record. Once that information is sifted out, that's when voters will start realising reform can be trusted in government, we can be trusted with the people in our party, and Nigel Farage will make Britain great again.
What do you think about that, Luke?
Yeah, I think I can see where the pollster is coming from. I think obviously there's going to be a lot more scrutiny on reform than has previously been the case. It's a new party. I think they've obviously had issues vetting candidates, and I know they're trying to sort of improve their processes in that. I come back to the guy in Wales, the ex-leader in Wales, who was taking payments from Russia. I think, you know, I'm surprised that's not had more media attention, actually, because that is pretty shocking, and I think it's beyond the level of a normal corruption scandal. It's when you're taking payments from a foreign power, particularly Vladimir Putin's Russia, and I just use that as an example of the type of thing that could come to light when you're a new party.
And it's a bad
having
look
to get
for
a
lot party which is considered to be friendly towards
supposedly patriotic party,
the Kremlin, which has been denied by Nigel Farage and others, but that's been a perception that they've been quite gentle on the the Russian regime in relation to others.
Exactly, and I also think on immigration, I'm unsure of how reform's line on immigration is going to play out when people actually have to go into the ballot box and mark their ballot, as opposed to when they're answering questions on an opinion poll survey. If you look at what people say is the most important issue facing the country, immigration does rank very highly. It ranks around the level of the NHS, a lot lower than the cost of living and the economy. And by the way, I think that's probably what's going to decide the next election. If public services and the economy improve, I think people say actually Labour's done a pretty good job. If they don't, then I think they'll look to alternatives. But people say immigration is one of the most important issues facing the country. So only about 4% say it's the most important issue facing me and my family. So are people actually going to vote on that as an issue? They might do. I'm not saying they won't, but they may not. Certainly, if whether you support reforms, immigration policies or not, they're certainly not going to make people's lives better the next day if they're implemented. Indeed, I think they'll make people's lives a lot worse, rounding up people who are here working, contributing, helping our public services and boosting them out of the country. I think is going to make public services and the economy and prices in this country a lot worse. But it's certainly not going to, it's certainly not going to make things better for people. It's not going to improve the NHS or.
Would you? I mean, I think that it's uncontroversial to say that if you've got people here who are critical workers in the NHS or the care sector,
that Reform would actually want them to stay and thank them for their efforts. Wasn't the point of this week's announcement to remove or not grant indefinite leave to remain to those who won't work? But surely they've got to go.
Well, my understanding was that it's even, that it's people who are working hard and doing vital jobs, but they might not be earning enough for Reform to consider them, useful contributors to Britain.
Well, because they might be a net drain on the taxpayer across their lifetime.
I think it's quite interesting that that's the view they have of people who earn that amount of money. If you're describing immigrants who earn that little money as a net drain on the taxpayer, doesn't that say something about their view of British people as well? I think people who are working hard in low-paid jobs deserve extra thanks because they're out there making a living, providing for their families and not getting very well rewarded for it. You've also got to factor that with this sort of so-called net drain, these people are doing useful jobs that enable higher earners who are bigger fiscal contributors to do their jobs. The example I'd give is cleaners in a hospital are obviously going to pay less tax than they consume in public services.
And they're going to hoover up a lot of in-work benefits.
But the higher earning surgeons aren't going to be able to do their jobs and make their fiscal contribution without the lower earning cleaners. So I just feel that the tone of the debate about low earning people is not very nice. And again, I don't think it will play very well with the public.
Demonising people that are critical to our society.
Yeah, exactly.
We are addicted to cheap foreign labour in this country. I'd love to invite you to the Isle of Sheppey. You say that immigration isn't at the forefront of people's minds. I know very well that in Ireland and people, immigration is the #1 priority. I mean, Sky News said the other day that our population has increased by 750,000 in the last year. 98% of that is due to immigration. And again, if there are people who come to this country who do the jobs that are quite currently needed, they can apply for acute skilled shorted visa. These will be limited to ensure that actually we keep those critical functions like things like the NHS. But fundamentally, we've got over 50% of people who come to this country become dependent on the state. That's wrong. Why should our British taxpayer money go to people who come here to use our resources, fill up our schools and our NHS waiting times when fundamentally they don't contribute? That's the problem. We are at this moment in time a bankrupt nation. You want people to be contributing and you want people to come to this country who fundamentally are the brightest and the best. That's simply not happening.
There's a small matter of 10 million people of working age almost who are not active in the economy. So if we want people to work in care homes, why don't we get the people that are British citizens to do that work rather than bring in cheap alternatives?
Again, I think this is just quite an interesting way of framing, like the term the brightest and the best. Does that imply that people who aren't high earners, are they the dimmest and the worst? I think it's quite, I'd almost say, wouldn't you have it the opposite way round? We want to be training up British people to be doing the high skilled work and bringing in people to do the less desirable jobs that hopefully our education system would be.
Isn't it like the good old days when
people,
all of the citizens just worked and some were low skill and some were high skill? Can't we just have citizens working again?
Well,
is that too much to ask?
But I think we've got an ageing population and we do need people to come in and support them. And I think on the point about Britain's economic position, Reform made some claims about the savings from this scheme, citing figures from a think tank that the think tank themselves have disowned. It is hard to estimate the cost of what Reform are proposing, but as a good estimate, a professor of economic policy at King's College London said it would be a cost to the British taxpayer about £90 billion cost from getting rid of people who are doing vital work for our public services
let me
and our
give
economy.
You right reply in just a second. Andrew's in Halifax. Andrew, is Nigel Farage a shoo-in for Prime Minister at the next election?
Oh, good morning, Mark.
Hi.
Well, I mean, nothing's guaranteed in life except death and taxes, as Mark Twain said. But I think we have a lot of momentum. I am was a lifelong Tory and now a Reform voter. But what I would say is that I don't want to sort of downplay the obstacles that do face Nigel Farage, and I think they're going to come from three principal factors. The first is the British establishment that will throw everything plus the kitchen sink at Reform in the run-up to the election. That's the first one.
And 90% of the media.
Yeah, indeed. The second one will come from separatist forces within the United Kingdom, because all the separatist parties in this country, Plaid Cymru, Sinn Féin, the SNP, are all left-wing, and they will use a reform government as a pretext to try and, take the brick hammer to this country's constitutional integrity. So that's got to be looked out for, and reform have got to be a party for the whole United Kingdom, not just for England. That's very important. And thirdly, I think that if reform do come to victory, as I hope they will, then I think you'll see mass street violence from the left, because that is the left's constant default position when they don't get their own way. And we saw that in Utah just a couple of weeks ago.
Andrew, some really salient points there. Are you worried about the possible fallout from a Reform UK victory, whether it's disorder on the streets or a political or establishment effort to undermine what could be a Nigel Farage premiership?
No, of course. I mean, the civil service, they'll do everything in their power to thwart us. One of our key principal policies, leaving the ECHR, I doubt those in the Home Office will want to support that, including those in the Justice Department. And again, fundamentally, I do think we'll see unions on the streets. I do think some schools and universities will close. Because, again, we will see Project Fear 2.0 at its very worst. I mean, Brexit, the establishment never really thought Brexit was going to happen. They sent to all our homes this nice little document saying all the reasons to remain in the EU. They never predicted Brexit to actually happen. When you're 100 polls in a row leading, when you've got a point gap of potentially 8 to 15 points, which is what reform is at the moment, yeah, they know it's a possibility and a potentiality. That's why we've got a department in Reform UK. If we're getting ready for government, we know these challenges, we will ensure, and I agree actually with your caller, we have to be a party for all of the United Kingdom, and that includes Northern Ireland.
Are you worried about bear traps laid by this government in anticipation of an incoming Reform UK administration?
100%. We talk about legislation, we talk about the civil service. They will be...
They could even further damage the economy as a scorched earth policy, couldn't they?
They very well could do. And I think
that's, I think, how vindictive and spiteful some of these politicians are.
The gloves will be off. And when you talk about radical reform in a country, the way the state runs, the fact that, for example, the civil service, we're going to do massive cuts, they will do everything in their power to thwart any success we possibly could have.
Well, Luke is in the spotlight next, because after this we will preview Labour's party conference. Is it going to be the worst Labour Party conference in living memory? That's next.
That are similar.
I have confidence in the Conservatives, and I have confidence in the energy and combativeness of Kemi.
But the public don't seem to agree with you.
Let's see.
Now, Raw soap opera meets the Epstein files.
Prince Andrew's ties to Epstein already represent one of the monarchy's greatest reputational meltdowns.
This 10-page birthday letter you wrote to Jeffrey Epstein makes a pretty cringeworthy reading.
I find them very embarrassing to see.
First convicted, first indicted, you continued a business and personal friendship.
It was
relationship.
not a business
Not a business relationship.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Luke Hildyard, Labour prepare for their annual conference. They've been in power for 14 months. They're fresh from a landslide election victory. It should be a celebration, but it's going to be quite the opposite, isn't it, when it starts?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm not surprised that they're having a difficult time of it. They had a terrible inheritance from the Tories, and they've tried to take unpopular decisions, front load them, put tax rises and things like that up early, and then in the hope that public services and the economy will improve by the time the next election comes around. So it doesn't surprise me that they're behind in the polls and that there's a fractious mood in the Labour Party. I think the fact you've had things like Andy Burnham's intervention and all this speculation about the Labour leadership, I think it's perhaps a bit of a sign of the kind of microscopic media and social media, and the fact that it doesn't stop in a way that it would have done in the pre-internet age. But also I think it is just that Starmer is doing worse than he would have hoped. So I don't think you can gloss over it too much. I think it's an interesting move. They've obviously got the deputy leadership election going on at the moment, and it looks like Lucy Powell, who's probably the more left-wing candidate, is going to win that pretty emphatically
as well.
Right, yeah, from Manchester. And I think that shows a bit of the mood in the party. Obviously, getting the economy going is the big challenge at the moment for Labour. Continuing to improve public services is, I think, something that they've got to do that's of critical importance. There's a lot of interest in the Labour Party, I think, in a wealth tax. Personally, I support a wealth tax. I think...
Do we want even more millionaires to leave the country?
Well,
16,000 so far this year and counting.
So that's a speculative study based on people on an agency who sell migration services to the super rich, who are obviously interested in talking the phenomenon up. Counting
well,
people's
you had an anecdote about the NHS
on LinkedIn.
I know lots of high achievers who have left or are planning to leave the country.
As I say, the actual tax data doesn't back that up. We'll see what happens. But my sort of point really isn't so much about the wealth tax, but the UK is an economy where nearly a quarter of all wealth is held by the top 1%. the bottom 50% hold less,
Luke,
hold around like 5%.
Is that all you've got
this
to
is
fix broken Britain? Is more taxes?
No, it's not. Actually, it's not about taxes. It's about, for example, getting people that own businesses to pay their workers a bit more. The point is, the key point is, we have an economy where a quarter of all wealth is held by 1% of the population. The bottom 50% hold around 5% of wealth. Unless you change that dynamic, you're not going to change living standards. You can get all the growth, you can create all the wealth you want, but if a quarter of it is going to the top, virtually none of it is going to people at the bottom. Things aren't going to, living standards aren't going to change, and we have to address that.
The conversation around Labour and their current problems, the answer seems to be, from Labour supporters, to shift further left, which is quite the opposite of what the country needs.
Absolutely, and again, this idea of a wealth tax, it's for the birds. If you want to make savings, net zero, and the ABR predicts this, net zero between now and 2050 is going to cost us £800 billion. Every single year we're spending over £4.5 billion on housing men who illegally broke into our country, in hotels. There are ways of savings, there are ways of making cuts. It just involves political will. I mean, for Labour members going into conference, it must be like a funeral. I mean, last week in Cardiff, we had a by-election. Reform won by 40%. The Labour vote dropped by over 27%. We recently had a councillor in Stevenage, a Labour councillor, defect to Reform. And if you look at all the big figures, people like Angela Rayner, they've all been shut down in flames. Yeah, the Labour Party is actually got an identity crisis. You've got things like your party, you've got the Green Party who are making a resurgence too. In the polls, I think they've gone up to 12%. So, you know, the mood is changing. Labour have got a massive problem. I don't think Starmer, however much he's going to be shouting, screaming at conference, is actually in a good place at all.
But he'll be focusing on reform. He sees reform now as the opposition.
Yes.
And he can rightly point out this week in his keynote speech that your numbers don't add up. It's sort of back of the fag packet stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, really. Again, but this is coming from the same man who said that there was a £22 billion black hole when there fundamentally wasn't. This is the same man who said he was going to stop the boats. Instead, he's actually smashing records. This is coming from even his chief secretary, Darren Jones, who is the one who did the video about the digital ID. He said in Question Time that, you know, the people coming in the boats were women and children. These people don't understand the real pressures going out there. Again, come down to places like Kent, speak to real ordinary folk who are small and medium-sized business owners who can't right now afford to employ people, who are now getting hit ridiculously hard by taxes. There is an identity crisis at Labour. Good luck to the conference.
Fascinating. Boys, it's been a brilliant conversation. Do return soon. My thanks to the brilliant reform supporter, Maxwell Harrison, and the excellent Labour supporter, Luke Hildyard. Lads, catch up soon. A very busy hour to come. This is not a drill. In the next hour, comedy legend Tommy Cannon, live on the show. Give us a call. Your memories of Cannon and Ball, your highlights from their incredible career at the top. 03444 499 1000. And a fresh political headache for Keir Starmer. All of that next.
Your Majesty, Melania and I are deeply grateful to you and Queen Camilla for your extraordinary graciousness. And to William and Kate, thank you so much. It's been so great being with you today. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. It's a singular privilege to be the first American president welcomed here. The phrase special relationship. Seen from American eyes, the word special does not begin to do it justice. We're joined by history and fate, by love and language. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a great honor to be with you.
Security remains the cornerstone of this special relationship. We have the deepest, most advanced defense relationship in the world.
As I said last night, the bond between our countries is like no other anywhere in the world. The United States and the United Kingdom have done more good on this planet than any two nations in human history.
We are working together to end the humanitarian catastrophe in the Middle East.
The one that I thought would be easiest would be because of my relationship with President Putin, but he's let...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
I'm Mark Dolan. This is Talk Breakfast. Your weekend starts here. Happy Saturday, one and all. A big hour to come as Labour prepare for their annual conference. We have a governing party in total disarray. Staffers at number 10 running for the hills, the rolling out of a controversial digital ID policy, and senior figures within Labour, including Sadiq Khan, Angela Rayner and Andy Burnham, jostling for position to replace the Prime Minister after just 14 months in office. As this administration limps from one crisis to another, how long can Sir Keir cling to power? We'll get views from across the political spectrum. And in a Talk Breakfast exclusive, in spite of amassing over 20 million viewers at the height of their fame and popularity, legendary comedy double act Cannon and Ball cruelly ignored by ITV during their 70th anniversary celebrations. I'll be joined live in this hour by comedy icon Tommy Cannon. That's right, this is not a drill. Tommy Cannon live on the show at 9:30 to talk about his incredible career, his deep friendship with Bobby Ball, and why this genius double act has been airbrushed from history. But first, just 14 months since their landslide victory, will Labour Party conference be a celebration or a wake? Let's get the views of the political editor of The Sun on Sunday, Kate Ferguson. Hello, Kate.
Hi, nice to be here.
You're heading to conference tomorrow.
Yes, I am.
And, you know, OK, a week is a long time in politics, but there still ought to be the afterglow of that election victory, but it won't be in evidence, will it?
No, I mean, things are really, really rocky for Labour. I mean, yesterday we had that huge poll showing us that Nigel Farage is the one on course for Downing Street. A turquoise tsunami, it looks like, heading for Britain. Meanwhile, Labour riddled by that factionalism, that civil war that so often hits that party. Andy Burnham on total manoeuvres. It's almost jaw-dropping, his audacity. And Keir Starmer's really, going into conference trying to shore up his leadership. Indeed. I mean, Andy Burnham isn't just showing the Labour membership a bit of leg. He's giving it the full Sharon Stone, isn't he? I was going to say, he's like basically in a mini-skirt. Yeah. It almost makes you blush, really. Yeah, it is shameless. And Starmer essentially calling out Burnham's ambition. It's just happened so soon, hasn't it? You know, there wasn't really a honeymoon for Starmer, and the problems have mounted up. Some of his making, some not of his making. Why do you think he's decided to make digital ID one of the hills to die on? Well, I think I think with digital ID, he knows that he needs to be seen to be doing things on illegal immigration. So this is, yes, it's hugely controversial. You know, there's a petition that's already been signed by 1 million people. I'm sure a lot of your listeners don't like this policy and think it's a sort of Stasi Papers, Please policy. But you know, it is a big debate that he can have and show that he is trying to do something on illegal immigration. Is it better for us all to talk about digital ID than to sit on Dover watching the boats roll in? Probably it is. So, you know, it needs to be, yes, looking at what levers he can pull, both in terms of getting those numbers down and tackling the black market and the problem fueling illegal immigration, but also some political debates are maybe better to be had than others, even if they are controversial.
Where are Sun readers in regard to digital ID? Because as you've said, certainly anecdotally, from the number of calls and texts that I've received whilst on air in the last 24 hours, it is 95% no, 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 because of the implications just for our individual freedoms and how this platform could be used against people in the hands of a less scrupulous administration in the future. But what about Sun readers? Because my understanding is that the majority of voters, the polling is quite positive about this digital ID.
Yeah, I think it really will come down to how the government managed to sell the big idea. I mean, and if we're honest, Keir Starmer often struggles to sell the big idea. Look, we're quite used to handing over our data now, but people are rightly suspicious of the state. You know, we just had that lockdown, we just had those COVID rules all slapped on us, which we just emerged from. And there's a lot of, I think, suspicion that the state does get it wrong sometimes. And then we see a lot of authorities overreach when they can. So I'm thinking of the police, how much they police Twitter, those kind of dawn raids, arresting people for something they've just posted on social media. People don't have that much confidence in the government and the state to kind of have their best interests at heart, protect their data, and to be trusted. And that's where I think the opposition will come from.
Most definitely. Speaking of opposition, it's quite clear as he goes into conference this week that Starmer sees reform, not the Conservatives, as his main political rivals.
Totally. I mean, Starmer's been toying with this for like months and months now, talking about how the Tories are dead, Nigel is the big opposition. I mean, he's right, Nigel is his big opposition. But he's gone studs up today. He's talking about how he's leading this battle for Britain's soul. I think he calls Nigel Farage the enemy in one piece. I think that's in the Guardian today. He's trying to tee this up as a real clash, a clash almost of civilisations within the UK. And he wants the Labour base to stop moaning, stop warring, stop talking to each other, unite, rally and take on this reform threat. But no, I mean, it remains to be seen if his party's going to go with him and listen to him, because so far they're much happier kind of gossiping about whether or not Andy Burnham's going to make a return than they are really kind of uniting and taking on this turquoise threat, which is just on the horizon.
What would be a good conference for Starmer at this stage?
Oh, gosh.
What would that look like?
Yeah, that's actually such a good question. A good conference for Starmer would be if, you know, it seems a bit of a conference. He's doing a lot of fringes, making a lot of interventions. If somehow Burnham missteps and Keir has a good speech, people say he's spelt out not just a kind of a newish vision for the country, but maybe some fleshing out some policies. But it's going to be really, really difficult because he's got no money. The budget's going to be really grim. Taxes are going to rise, and he can't really afford to give his parliamentary base, his Labour base, everything they want.
Most definitely. Can we talk about 750,000 more people in the UK than last year? That, again, is a fresh headache for Sir Keir Starmer. Yes, it's a legacy of a Conservative policy, but it's his problem now that he's in number 10.
His problem now, these new shock figures, that's to the year ending June 24, so you're right, that's just before Labour come in. But that is the population of Leeds, roughly, added to the UK. That's immigration. You know, the problem with immigration is it is a numbers issue. It's been sky high for years. Now it's Labour's problem. They've promised to get those numbers down, but will they? I mean, it's interesting. You know, on the one hand, we've got these new massive immigration figures getting coverage in all the papers. You open the Times, Rachel Reeves has done an interview talking about this EU youth mobility scheme, which is going to let in probably another 50,000 people. So, you know, they're being torn in two directions, Labour. They've got to show they can restore sense to the borders. British people want immigration to come down. They think we've been too hooked on foreign labour. But the Treasury, it's still hooked on that foreign labour, and they want more because the GDP is so low, the economy is so grim.
And the big problem for Starmer, I think, is actually not Nigel Farage or Kemi Badenoch. I do think it's the MPs behind him, because in my humble opinion, At this moment in time, I think that what the country needs is cuts in public spending, because we live beyond our means. We're in the red. We need to cut immigration, as you mentioned, and we need to cut taxes in order to have economic growth, right? But those are the three things that his own party don't want him to do.
Oh, they won't want him to do that. They're happy with taxes this high. In fact, they want more taxes, right? The clamour from the Labour MPs is for this so-called wealth tax, whatever that means. Immigration, they often, Labour MPs, think any curbs of immigration, any criticism of the numbers is kind of racist. They're very kind of nervous of talking about it. So again, that's not even going to be hugely popular. And benefits, you're right. Look, people admit too many people are out of work and that maybe they need to do more to get them back into work. But when it comes to benefits, that is always a massive problem for Labour. Someone in Labour told me that benefits, welfare is sort of like the Tory what Brexit was to the Tories, welfare is to Labour. They never vote for cuts willingly. In fact, they always want more benefits. And obviously the clamour in the Labour Party now is for the two-child benefit cap to be lifted.
Yes, which is a tragedy for the administration, because it makes it harder for them to balance the books, which is surely the number one purpose of any administration, but perhaps not. Stay with us if you can, Kate, because Andrea is endorsed it. Andrea, you're not happy about digital ID. Why?
Oh, I think it is an egregious overstep by an increasingly tyrannical political class, actually. I think if you think of how the farmer tags his cattle, he does so to keep an eye on his livestock, not the wildlife. So anyone who is telling you that this is to control illegal immigrants, you know, they are credulous sponges if they believe this. It is an abomination, and I've just written an email to my useless Labour MP in South Dorset, who is notorious for not answering any emails, that shame on them all. If they think that they are entitled to do this to the British people, shame on them. And just remind everyone that Starmer's speech, he pledged to be of service to this country. This isn't service. This is an entitled, small man who thinks that he can effectively control people. And, you know, just like the lockdowns, they'll sell this, oh, it's just, you know, it's just a few weeks, and then it'll all be fine.
And it's for your own good.
Yes, oh, it's just, and then you fill in the gaps, and then it will just be, I'm afraid, I said in my email, the list would be so long that the document I'm sending you would be unending, because really, you know, your imagination can run wild. That's the problem with it.
Yeah, Andrew, stay with us. I mean, Kate Ferguson, do you think the Prime Minister has perhaps underestimated the extent of public anger out there? Even if the polling suggests that a majority are for it or agnostic about it, there will be a vocal minority, at least, folk like Andrea, who are not happy and may well take to the streets. And of course, there's a degree of political unanimity on this too. Richard Bergen, Corbynite, and Nigel Farage, cheek by jowl in their opposition.
Yeah, the political opponents are lining up to try and kill this policy dead. I think you're probably right. You know, this was a huge row, huge political row during the New Labour years when David Blunkett tried to bring it out. And in the end, when the Tories came in, they bulleted this policy. I think probably this new Starmer regime had thought times have moved on, we're quite used to signing our data away, everyone has a smartphone, maybe the debate had moved on. But they could be taken by surprise at just the scale of the backlash, which we're hearing obviously just now. So definitely, you know, this isn't a done deal.
No, not a done deal. Andrea, what measures will you take to reject the idea of a digital ID? How far would you go?
Well, the trouble is it's numbers, isn't it? If you have a very weak population who are not going to really push back on this...
Just like with lockdowns.
Well, in a way, you know, you and I can be out in the cold doing this and saying, oh, we're not going to partake. But the trouble is if you're self-employed, you can guarantee you won't be able to register a tax return. I suspect they'll start withdrawing access to the NHS. I expect that they're going to use these AI centres to start overseeing this. I mean, where does it go? Do they draw up a charge sheet that's going to be laid at your feet based on your social media activity? You know, your imagination can run wild with this, and we just don't need it, quite frankly. And what I would say is that serpent, Blair, is behind this. You know, he is just like the snake out of the Jungle Book with his spinning eyes. He tells you all these sweet platitudes about how it's all just going to be so marvellous. He is just totally unflushable, that man. And the fact that he's got his hands all over this tells you that this comes from the depths of hell. It's an abomination, and people need to start growing a spine and standing up to it. And unless we all refuse to use this damn thing, they will just foist it upon us. I think they take advantage of a society that has a culture where we litter our conversation with apology. We have embedded in our culture the practice, if you like, of the gentleman. We stand in queues. We're thoroughly decent, actually, apart from listening to all these left-wing activists who tell you that we're an abominable nation. And I think our decency has been taken advantage of for years, and our innate trust in our institutions. I'm afraid those institutions are now rendered unrecognisable. These politicians are trying to just effectively import huge numbers of people into this country deliberately, so they can use it as a pretext, in my opinion. And I think people have got to stand up to it. These people are our public servants. They are not our masters.
And they've forgotten, haven't they, the rules of engagement, and it feels like we serve under them now. And I find it hard to disagree with you, Andrea, given the tyranny and authoritarianism that we saw during COVID, and it looks like a dry run for something far worse in the years ahead. Really and powerful.
Look, they can link it to digital currency. This has been the big worry. Certainly Ursula von der Leyen and all these other people have been talking about this. This is not some sort of fiction that I've imagined. So let's just say they start saying, well, you know, you've had so many litres of petrol this week and you're not going to be able to buy any more. You know, where does this go?
Well, I totally agree with you. I mean, a cashless society is a natural consequence of this policy, isn't it?
And by the way, the pretext of that is already being laid, because they're starting to say, well, this black market where all these illegal people are working, they're being paid in cash. Do you see? So it's cart before the horse. It's the dark arts, I'm afraid, of statecraft. You want to bring in something that would hitherto be unimaginable. You confect the crisis. It's problem, reaction, solution. And I'm afraid I think this is what's being done to the British people at the moment.
Very, very powerful call. Andrea, do call me again in the near future. Have a great weekend. Andrea in Dorset there. Really, really furious about this digital ID. I mean, the issue with it, Kate, is that some people may not be as concerned as Andrea are, but it just doesn't seem like a fight worth picking at the moment. It doesn't seem like it's going to fix any of the problems the problems that face the country. Quite expensive, difficult to execute. It may never happen. It doesn't feel like this is the kind of tentpole policy that's going to save Starmer's skin.
I do think that the state hasn't proven itself very good at rolling out new projects, whatever they are. So I do wonder with this, you know, they say they want to bring it in by the end of the Parliament. You could see this kind of getting more and more expensive, kind of being bogged down in bureaucracy, them not being able to figure out a kind of even an app that they can physically kind of build and trust to do it. And I mean, if this is inching towards the next election, we're kind of 28, 29 before it happens, and if Nigel Farage is still so ahead in the polls, I could see him coming in and just immediately binning it. So if this spy was out of control as a sort of white elephant big state project, then you can totally see how it won't even really get off the ground.
Well, indeed. Could it be the digital equivalent of HS2? That's the worry, isn't it? Kate, cannot wait for tomorrow's paper and all of your coverage from conference this week. And all being well, I'll see you in a week's time when you'll have survived what is going to be more like a wake than a celebration. But you'll do a bit of partying while you're there, I would have thought.
Exactly, a bit of gossiping.
Press the flesh.
Press the flesh, yeah. Bit of wicked whispers, a bit of partying, exactly.
That's it, we're here for the gossip. My thanks to The Sun on Sunday's political editor, Kate Ferguson. Next up, can somebody help Keir Starmer with his performance on stage this week? Next up, we've got presentation coach and a man who's advised many party leaders, so he knows his onions. That's next.
There's a park in Ilford called, I think it's called Valentine Park. We heard reports that a swan had been taken out of the lake and was seen being carried by several men, 3 or 4 men, and they were running out of the park with it. We heard a similar story from Tottenham Hale that a man was seen camping around a lake and there were swan feathers everywhere and swan bones. The authorities didn't turn up straight away. They went a few days later. There was still this massacre of bones on the floor.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, I know what Keir Starmer needs this week. It is a political presentation coach. And as luck would have it, live in the studio, a man that's advised several former Prime Ministers, Graham Davies. Graham, welcome to the show.
Delighted to be here, Mark.
So Keir Starmer, he's not a natural, is he, on the podium?
He's not a natural. He has the emotional breadth of a mahogany sideboard.
Yikes.
And one of his problems is that he only has 2 modes. He can either be intense barrister or very intense barrister. He's got no alternatives to those 2.
So being a lawyer has shaped his persona?
Absolutely. It's inextricably part of his DNA politically as well, and he can't shake it. But what he also can't shake is this. He never really owns his words when he's doing a set-piece speech. He doesn't own it at the creation stage, and he doesn't own it at the delivery stage. Most of his conference speeches, as I understand it, are written by committee. He does have some input, but not really enough input. And so when he's speaking from the heart, he's often speaking from the heart of the person who mainly wrote it and loaded it up on the auto cue.
Well, he surprised a few people when he said that Britain risks becoming a land of strangers. It didn't sound like a very Starmer line. He then suffered a backlash and said, well, I didn't write that and I'd like to apologise, which I think tells you everything.
Indeed so. He doesn't have the courage of what other people say for him. And the other thing, of course, is that as a teleprompt user, he's a very efficient reader, but he's not an efficient teleprompt performer. And so because he hasn't created most of the thrust of the words that he's saying, and he only rehearses, say, a couple of times, he never really owns the delivery. And so when you're rehearsing it a couple of times, it comes across as rehearsed. If you rehearse it 10 or 12 times, obviously in front of a professional coach, it can come across as compellingly spontaneous. And the other thing about rehearsing a lot is that it minimises the possibility of you having a moment when you say, Hamas must release the sausages.
Yeah, right. We'll never forget that. And there's always a chance that he's got a mistake in him and that could happen again. Clearly, he's not a natural orator. It's surprising for someone that, is a former lawyer, because normally they have the gift of the gab. If you were looking after Keir Starmer this week, what would your advice be? What would your strategy be?
I'm a former criminal barrister myself, so I know what it means to have that sort of label as your background. One of the problems that he has, in an overview sense, that he hasn't really been able to define a distinctive Starmer direction. And I think that's going to be difficult for him to do over the next 48 hours. You see, when Margaret Thatcher was operating and Tony Blair, throughout their 3 governments, they were always operating with a pretty large majority, in a couple of cases an enormous majority. And so we were able to see the genesis of Blairism, of Thatcherism.
Yeah.
But Starmer hasn't identified what could possibly be defined as Starmerism yet.
And he doesn't lead like a man with a big majority, which he actually has.
He really doesn't. There was a successful act of conjugation on the 4th of July last year, but there's certainly been no afterglow. Yeah. He's been like a man who, on the 5th of July, was standing in front of an Olympic swimming pool with 8 possible lanes to swim down, and he tried to swim down all of them and hasn't made any progress on any of them. That is his key problem.
How can a man responsible for a landslide election victory be so poor at communication in office? Did he get lucky last July? What happened?
Well, of course, Thatcher and Blair had a good... how should I put it? They were the reasons behind... They had their... They were the originators of their own majority. By that I mean this. It was their character and their personality that largely engineered their majorities. Keir Starmer's majority was not from his character and personality. It was because of hatred of the Tories. Now, awe of someone's character, like Thatcher and Blair, all leads to obedience. Unfortunately, because of hatred of another party, that often leads to disobedience, especially when an awful lot of the MPs within the Parliamentary Labour Party probably are amazed that they're there, and they don't think that they've ever got a chance of any form of ministerial preferment, and so that leads to inevitable disobedience.
Most definitely, because the power that any Prime Minister has is the power of patronage, the ability to appoint people to cabinet and not. And if there are some that think they don't have skin in the game, they won't obey.
They won't have skin in the game forever.
So it's an empty majority. It's an illusory majority.
And it's an illusory majority even more so because they are amazed that they are so scared themselves of Farage coming in and sweeping so many of them away, possibly in 3 years' time.
And tell me about Farage. What is his great gift, do you think? Why is he so far ahead in the polls?
When he is at his best, he calculates what he says and delivers it brilliantly. But when he's at his worst, he sort of makes things up on the hoof and he sort of struggles. Now,
do you think that happened this week with Nick Ferrari when he was asked whether paracetamol causes autism?
He gets very angry very quickly.
I don't know.
I've no idea. And that is his tell for having been caught slightly off guard. He gets very resentful very quickly as a way of perhaps scaring and shutting down presenters. I know you'd never let that happen, Mark.
Never. I'm unflappable, as you know. But, I mean, I know Nigel, and he's a really, really charming man. He's a nice guy, right? Just set politics aside. He's, I've worked with him, and the producers and teams that have worked with him only speak very highly. But he definitely appears a little thin-skinned in some TV interviews, and I think if his handlers were wise, they'd alert him to that there's an almost Blairite sort of flavour to some of his responses, as in, how dare you question what I'm saying? Because Blair was a bit like that, wasn't he?
He could occasionally, but I think that because Blair didn't have to operate under the glare of so many TV stations and social media as well, in the way that Farage does.
And he didn't have as many people after him, essentially.
Indeed so, that's right. I think that politics has become more polarised since then. But this immediate incandescence that we've identified as a Farage characteristic on camera, sometimes it may be a deliberate ploy, but sometimes I feel it is one of his weaknesses.
I think it's a weakness because it's contrary to his brand as the sort of warm, common sense man of the people.
The patron saint of pub bores.
Yeah.
But the pub bore that you wouldn't mind having a couple of pints with.
And a pub bore wouldn't turn on you if you asked the wrong question.
That's right. And indeed, that, I've no idea, does sound as if he's saying, you're a complete idiot.
Yeah. Listen, the bottom line is, the issue you've got as a political presentation coach is that they're all human. And they've all got their weaknesses, haven't they?
They have all got their weaknesses, but of course, what politicians really try to do is to create a strength from their weakness. A speech that's leading up to a general election is quite easy in the last 6 months because there are only 2 possible messages. Either A, it's time for change, or B, no, it isn't. Now, unfortunately, when you're in this stage of the political cycle, you've almost got too much choice. You can either do, perhaps, firstly, your backstory or your track record and make the most of that. Now, we don't want to hear about the toolmaker's son yet again, and unfortunately they don't have a track record to really boast about. Secondly, you can talk about your vision, the blue sunlit uplands, but he hasn't got that either. or thirdly, you can focus on your practical steps. And I think that the ID card concept, he's probably stolen from Rishi Sunak's grotty folder out of which he got the idea for national service.
Why has Kemi Badenoch not fulfilled the promise that she presented to the Tory party faithful when she won the leadership?
She has suffered, I believe, from passive-aggressive paralysis. It was a very good ploy for her during her leadership campaign, specifically not to go into policy detail and to talk about principles, and it was a genuinely effective differentiating characteristic of her campaign. But that needed to be switched up very quickly in the first 2 months of her leadership, and she never has done. And this has been especially epitomised during July and August, where instead of snatching the initiative while Keir Starmer was doing international stuff, she in fact has left a vacuum into which reform has marched vigorously, and she sort of tried to play catch up, and not very well.
No, listen, I tell you something, she needs to give you a call. Get you on speed dial. Graham, when we've got longer, when you're not the warm-up man for Tommy Cannon, we'll have a longer, more wide-ranging
I look
chat.
forward to it, Mark.
Really enjoyed your company. My thanks to political presentation coach Graham Davies. This is not a drill. Next up, comedy legend Tommy Cannon live on the show. Don't go anywhere.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
You are listening to the Home of Common Sense Talk. It's lovely to have your company. Do join the conversation, 0344 499 1000. Lots of messages to get through, I've got to say. First of all, do you remember when comedy was funny? Take a listen to this.
It's the Cannon and Ball Show, starring Tommy Cannon and Bobby Ball.
Hey, Tommy! Well, here we are, eh?
Now, Cannon and Ball were one of the most successful comedy double acts in the history of this country, at one point attracting over 20 million viewers to their show on ITV. They were at the top of their game for decades.
thanks to their sharp gags, singing skills, occasional dancing, slapstick comedy, and an electric chemistry between two men who were colleagues and dear friends. Now, sadly, Bobby Ball passed in 2020, but Tommy Cannon is still a very active entertainer in his 80s, you wouldn't believe it. And his new book about his extraordinary career and deep friendship with Bobby is coming out in October. It is called Tommy Cannon, This Is Me. But in spite of all of that, inexplicably, these much-loved comedy legends, these amazing entertainers, were completely ignored by ITV during their 70th anniversary celebrations. It makes no sense, but I'm delighted to say that here at Talk, we are celebrating Cannon and Ball all the way, and I'm delighted to say that Tommy Cannon joins me now. Hello, Tommy.
Hiya, how are you doing?
Listen, I'm so well, and I'm going to focus exclusively on the success you had, Tommy, how much my viewers and listeners love you and are grateful for the laughs and the entertainment over the years. But can we just deal with this ITV story for a second? They've had their 70th anniversary celebrations, recognising the biggest shows in their history, and yet, for some strange reason, Cannon and Ball omitted. Do you know why?
I've got no idea at all. It's just so sad. I mean, we've been trying to get a documentary out. It's been to ITV, it's been to Channel 5, it's been to quite a few of the stations, and all of them have sort of rejected it. It's just, I just can't understand it at all. And there are, my son, who is my manager now, put it out there, and thousands of people read it and said, what's going on? And to be honest with you, I really don't know. I feel as though we've been sort of kicked into touch and forgotten about. But like you said, 20 million viewers on a Saturday night. I mean, and I know it's incredible, and I'm still doing cruises, and I'm not letting the legacy fall away, and I'm still doing it. And, you know, people on the cruise said, why aren't you part of this and part of... I said, I've got no idea what is going on, and I really haven't. I
don't understand it, Tommy. I'm pinching myself that I'm interviewing you because as a child and a teenager, I'm on the living room floor crying with laughter at the banter, the chemistry between you and Bobby, the bittersweet humour, you know, the comedy fallings out, his hurt feelings, and you kiss and make up. It was an unbelievable dynamic. You were original. You had a massive audience. I'm just wondering, could it be some kind of snobbery about the act? Because Cannonball were, you know, is it two men, real men, funny, down to earth, regular guys? Is that what it is? Is it snobbery?
I can't honestly. I suppose there is an element of that. I don't know, but I mean, we were just two ordinary lads who, for 15 years, went round the clubs, the working men's clubs, etc., climbed our way to the top, and 20 million viewers. And I just don't understand why ITV, I suppose more than anybody, could turn down a documentary about mine and Bob's lives. It's just, it's absolutely blowing my mind, because I don't know whether, because they've not shown any of Cannon and Ball's material, I don't know whether there's some, if you like, somebody got the rights to it all and not allowing it to be shown. I don't know. I can't understand it at all. The production company are in the same mind as saying, what on earth is going on?
They've got...
We can't understand it.
No, they must be able to get hold of some material, considering so much of that footage, you know, in principle belongs to them. You would have thought, or they could pay for it, they could rent it. There's got to be a way. And it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But who cares? Because, you know, your legacy is intact. You've entertained millions of people. You've had an incredible career. I guess the reason why you're upset, Tommy, is that you probably feel like you've got to defend your legacy on behalf of Bobby.
Yes. And I have, yes. It's true. You know, he was, you know, years and years back when I first met him, if you like, by accident. 500 men on a shop floor, and he's the first person to speak to me, and the rest is history.
What were your first impressions of him?
Oh, well, he came in, and he walked in and he said, "You all right, Cock?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm fine, mate." And it's true. And as he walked away, I thought to myself, wow, that's a funny little beggar. And from then on, that was it. It was like, I always thought as time went on, this is meant to be. It was meant to be. I mean, we auditioned when auditions were going on. And I remember going to this audition, and there was a guy on stage playing the piano, and Bob said, "You know what? He's rubbish. He'll never pass the audition." It was Les Dawson. Oh. So them sort of things live in your memory, and I can't understand at all. We had 12, 13 years at ITV, and honestly, we had the time of our lives, the same crew, same makeup girls. It was like a family. And I cannot understand why ITV are behaving like they are. Honestly, I can't. I'm so disappointed.
No, it's shocking, and it's a real insult, not just to you and the incredible hard work over the years, but to the viewers as well, because if Cannon and Ball aren't celebrated as part of 70 years of ITV, then you're saying to the people that loved Cannon and Ball, yeah, you don't matter. We're not going to celebrate those lads. And it is an odd thing. It's happened to others, though. I mean, these TV executives, they're not very nice people, are they? I mean, do you remember the treatment of Benny Hill, who made millions for ITV? And was abruptly fired in a perfunctory meeting that lasted about 3 minutes. No thank you, no golden send-off, no special, just you're out.
No. Well, we were the same. We got fired. A guy came into the studios and said, "I need to meet, I want a meeting with all the northern comedians." And we all went for this meeting, and he said, "You're all fired." And we went, "What?" He said, "You're all fired." I said, "What's the problem?" He said, "The problem is people down south can't understand what you're saying."
I've never heard so much nonsense in my life.
And Coronation Street was on at that time.
Yeah, and what about the 20 million people that watched you at Christmas? It makes no sense. And but like I said, it doesn't matter, because your legacy is your legacy, Tommy. And you and Bobby were the elite, the biggest stars in the country. And among the all-time greats. And that's something that, you've got to celebrate, you've got to be proud of. I think that hopefully from this interview, I hope it'll go viral online, and that some executives out there will realise, this extraordinary fan base that you had and still have. And I'm going to encourage people, 0344 499 1000, give me a call with your memories of Cannon and Ball. Tell me about those years on the road before you made it. Were they difficult, Tommy?
Yeah, I mean, they were difficult. Some of them were laughable. We did a social club in Sheffield where they'd had new curtains fitted, and Bob and I in them days were only singing, and we were walking as we were singing the song. We were walking forward and backwards. And as we walked backwards, the curtains started to come in. So as the curtains got to us, we stepped in front of the curtains, and the curtains went out. And so we carried on, and this went on all the way through the song. And at the end of it, we walked off, and Bob said to the guy in the wings, he said, "Hey, mate," he said, "there's something wrong with your curtains." He said, "Nothing wrong with curtains." He said, "You're crap. Been trying to get you off for the past 20 minutes.
That is golden, because people won't realise that you started as singers, and then what happened? What got you into comedy? Were things going wrong on stage, or what happened?
No, I always thought somewhere along the line we would turn to comedy, because Bobby was a comic, not a comedian. A comedian tells jokes, a comic's got funny bones, and he was always funny. Even in our very early days. We went on stage with a comedian, and we all went off into the chairman's office to get paid, and he got £12 and me and Bob got £6. So on the way out, Bob said to him, "Listen, mate," he said, "there's two of us," he said, "and there's only one of you, and you got more money than us." So bloke said, well, he said, you do comedy, Bobby, you get a bit more money. Following night, I went into this social club, started to do comedy, and it was that bad, we got paid off.
Well, you got the last laugh, didn't you? We're going to talk about the highs and lows of fame and your deep friendship with Bobby after this.
Yeah.
Tommy Cannon live on the show on Talk. If you've got memories of Cannon and Ball, of course you do, give me a call, 0344 499 1000.
There's a park in Ilford called, I think it's called Valentine Park. We heard reports that a swan had been taken out of the lake and was seen being carried by several men, 3 or 4 men, and they were running out of the park with it. We heard a similar story from Tottenham Hale that a man was seen camping around a lake and there were swan feathers everywhere and swan bones. The authorities didn't turn up straight away. They went a few days later. There was still this massacre of bones on the floor.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Comedy legend Tommy Cannon is with us live on the show. A flood of messages coming in. This from one texter. I went to see Cannon and Ball in 1980 at the Alhambra, Bradford, and bought a pair of Rock On Tommy braces. I was 10. Fantastic times. How about this from another texter? John, tell Tommy to try TPTV for their documentary. They're still showing some of their appearances. He also saw you in Bradford as well. Mark says, Stephen, as a family, we always went to see Bobby and Tommy at the theatre at Torquay. They also came to our town, not far from Torquay, to support our local hospital. Every Saturday we watched the boys. Brilliant, happy times. ITV have definitely gone woke. We never watch. What a shame. The reason, says Brad, why TV channels won't show greats like Cannon and Ball is purely down to woke and political correctness. They're terrified of offending someone, so we suffer wet mediocrity for entertainment these days. What do you think about that, Tommy? Do you think that political correctness is a problem these days in comedy?
Oh, yeah, I think so, yeah. I mean, I don't know, I watch sort of shows now, and I watch it and think, well, I don't think I've laughed too much.
Yeah.
What's wrong?
Yeah.
And I just can't understand it. It's completely changed since the days that Bob and I were on TV. It's just not that warmth, that loveliness to sit there and laugh out loud. You sometimes sit there and you go, well, what's this? I don't get it. It's not. I'm not laughing. It's a comedy. What's going wrong? I can't understand it at all. I really can't.
Well, I totally agree, and they just don't seem to have jokes anymore. But
No.
listen, you've got so many fans out there. The switchboard has melted. We'll never have enough time to get through all the calls. But
No
Craig
problem.
is in Stoke-on-Trent. Tommy, take a listen to. Hi, Craig. Thanks for your call.
Good morning, fellas. How are you?
Very good. What would you like to say to the big man?
Mate, I tell you what, Tommy, I've been waiting a lifetime for this, and I've always wondered. When I was a young lad, mate, I was going through hell, and the only thing we had that you got me through, and I mean this, you and Tommy, got me through the most difficult, horrific times of my life. Looking forward to you guys that made me laugh. Later, and then years later on, I can't even explain. I've been waiting. I'm 55 now. Excuse me. to give you a personal thank you. I do a lot for charity now as the Shed singer. I even sang a little section of "Together We'll Be Okay" for Bobby's charity when we try and get out.
Yeah.
I can't. You made me the person I am today. I was going through a lot at home. I was in and out of children's homes for certain stuff with my family, and you and waiting with my mum for you pair to come on. Moulded me as a nobody, and ended up travelling the world and back. I only do my charity stuff in a shed, hence the Shed singer thing. But you made me, and I've been waiting a lifetime to try and get the opportunity. I thought maybe one day I'll bump into you in Blackpool or something and what have you, but I just wanted you, and I've always wondered if you know just words are words, but just how you saved me. And you pair saved me, literally.
Thank you very much.
And I've always wondered at 55 if you ever really knew just what you guys did for some of us. You were literally all we had to look forward to bring some sunlight into our lives.
Craig, I'm so glad. Isn't that an incredible call from Craig? Craig, you're a star for opening up about that. You lads, you were warm, Tommy, and you were funny.
No. Yeah, I mean, wow. I just, I can't understand why, when you get a message like that from that lovely man, why ITV have done what they've done. It's just heartbreaking. And I know Bobby's up there and thinking to himself, what the heck's going on? Because it's just I cannot understand it. I can't, and I'll never be able to understand what's gone on.
Well, it's unforgivable, Tommy, because you've been cancelled. Craig, you're a star, and I really appreciate your call. And I'm really glad that life has panned out in a positive way for you, helped in part by the wonderful entertainment of Cannon and Ball. Caroline's in Norwich. She'd love to talk to you as well, Tommy. Caroline, thank you for calling.
Good morning. Hi.
Morning, love.
Morning. I just wanted to say that my friends and I came to see you twice when you came with the Best of British Variety tour.
Oh,
and
yeah.
It was superb. All the acts were amazing. And we laughed till we cried. It was one of the best shows we'd seen. I brought my girls up watching you, and my youngest daughter has got special needs. She's 23. She roars with laughter when she's watching Cannon and Ball. And it's really sad that I wasn't able to bring them to see you live, but I just want to say thank you. And the one thing that British comedy is missing today, and the TV doesn't seem to understand, or the TV managers, that all ages fingers can watch Cannon and Ball. And there's nothing there to offend anybody. It brings us all together. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, sweetheart. Thank you. And rock on.
Rock on.
Thank you.
That's a brilliant call, Caroline. I mean, the other big thing for me I want to get across is that, Bobby obviously had the braces and the catchphrases, and he was, a hilarious man. But you were hilarious too, right? It was the chemistry between you with your straight face. But I want to put it on record that you are a very funny man too, Tommy. As far as I'm concerned, you were not the straight man. That's not how it worked.
Thank you. I've never known what a straight man is. I keep trying to find it.
Well, can I give you an example? Do you remember performing Shaboom Shaboom?
No.
Oh my God, it was one of the funniest moments, and it was because you obviously were like the crooner of the partnership.
Oh yeah.
And Bobby was chipping in with some backing vocals, and it was spoiling your moment in the sun, and that was the magic of your partnership.
Yeah, you're right.
And listen, you're going to do a tour. You're going to do a live show with your son Luke, which must be a proud moment for you.
Yes, it is. Yeah, it's he's been brilliant. Yeah, he's looks after me now. There's no problems now with agents do a good job, but they don't always do the right thing.